I discovered that my wife was having an affair with her secretary. I took all her dirty underwear to the office and threw them on her desk in front of everyone. You ever open an email so bad it kills your hunger, your mood, and maybe your will to live? Yeah, that was me on a perfectly normal Tuesday morning. Brooks Walker, suburban husband, proud minivan warrior, an occasional unpaid Uber driver for 2 kids who think seatbelts are optional. I wasn't out to start World War III. I just wanted breakfast. Maybe a sausage biscuit, maybe peace. But fate, that twisted little comedian, decided I needed a full-course meal of heartbreak with a side of stupidity. It started when I borrowed my wife's iPad to order takeout, because apparently, Clara changed our DoorDash password more often than our bedsheets. I type burger in the search bar, and instead of getting Five Guys, I get something else. An open tab labeled Special Project, Confidential. Now, I don't know about you, but after 15 years of marriage, confidential means one of 2 things: birthday surprise or betrayal. Spoiler alert, it wasn't balloons. The screen lit up with a thread of emails and texts between my lovely wife and her assistant, a 20-something gym rat named Jasper Lee. A man whose Instagram bio probably read, entrepreneur, protein enthusiast, part-time idiot. The first message said, "Can't wait for our meeting after hours," winking face, followed by pictures that could make a priest drop his Bible and sprint. There were heart emojis, lip emojis, and a few attachments that would have violated at least 3 workplace policies and 1 moral code. I scrolled. Every swipe was like taking a punch. Your wife's the best boss ever. You make me feel alive. Wish my husband was as adventurous as you. You know what I wish? That I hadn't read any of it. My appetite died so fast it deserved a funeral. There I was, sitting in my kitchen, half-eaten toast in hand, realizing my marriage had turned into an unpaid internship for a man who called women shoddy. No tears came. No dramatic violin music. Just that weird numb silence, like my brain had filed for emotional bankruptcy. The coffee machine hissed, and for some reason, that sound felt like it was mocking me. I leaned back and looked at the ceiling, muttering, 15 years, and she cheats with someone who says yo in work emails. I swear I heard the ceiling fan whisper, "You married her, bro." I didn't shout, didn't break a plate, didn't even throw the iPad, which is growth, by the way, considering I once punched a wall over losing my fantasy football league. Instead, I made a mental note. If she wanted drama, I'd give her a show worthy of an Emmy. Because if you're gonna make me look like a fool, at least I'm gonna look good doing it. That night, I kept it casual. She came home all smiles, wearing that "I'm exhausted but mysterious" expression. You know the one. She kissed my cheek and said, "Long day." I wanted to say, "Oh, I bet," but instead, I smiled and said, "Order takeout." It took every ounce of willpower not to mention the special project I'd seen. She babbled about a client dinner, how Jasper worked so hard, and how the new ad campaign would change the company's image. I nodded, thinking, oh, it's changing all right. Then she said something that nearly made me choke on my water. "You should really meet Jasper sometime. He's a great guy." Yeah, a great guy? If great meant barely legal homewrecker with biceps bigger than his sense of decency. I laughed. It wasn't my usual laugh. It was the kind that makes people shift uncomfortably, like they just realized the clown at the birthday party might be unhinged. Clara looked confused, but I just waved it off and said, "You're right. I'd love to meet him." She had no idea that the next time we met, there'd be witnesses and possibly a hashtag involved. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay there staring at the ceiling, next to a woman who snored like nothing was wrong. I started thinking about our history, the wedding with the bad DJ, the mortgage we fought over, the nights she claimed to be catching up on work. Turns out she was catching something, but it wasn't spreadsheets. Around 2 a.m., I got up and walked to the kitchen. The fridge light flickered on like it knew I needed company. I opened a beer and started laughing quietly to myself. You ever laugh so hard at how ridiculous your life is that you almost admire it? That was me, barefoot, drinking cheap beer, thinking about how my wife turned project management into private management. I considered confronting her right then. But where's the fun in that? Nah. Clara was about to get a front row seat to her own downfall, and I was going to direct it. Calm, precise, cinematic. The next morning, I made breakfast like usual. Pancakes, bacon, orange juice. Clara walked in, looking guilty of nothing and dressed like Pinterest personified. "You're in a good mood," she said. "Yup," I replied, "just feeling inspired." She smiled, completely oblivious, and kissed me on the cheek. That's when I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was entertained. Betrayal had turned me into a screenwriter, and this was Act 1. I dropped the kids off at school, humming to myself like a man who'd found religion in revenge. The whole drive, I thought about how people cheat thinking they're living some secret movie romance. But they forget every movie ends with credits, and I hold the remote. Later that day, I logged into her work calendar. Don't ask how. I'm just gifted, and found her next company meeting. I didn't know what I was going to do yet, but I knew I wanted an audience. I've always been a people person, especially when those people can witness poetic justice live in an HD. That evening, I watched her get ready for her late-night meeting. She sprayed perfume, fixed her hair, and said, "Don't wait up." "Wouldn't dream of it," I said, smiling like a man who just set a trap and was waiting for it to snap. When she left, I sat down with the iPad again. This time, I screenshotted everything. Every message, every emoji, every scandalous pixel. I didn't want revenge built on rumor. I wanted receipts. I even made a folder on my desktop titled House of Lies. It felt professional. Somewhere around midnight, I realized something wild. I wasn't sad. I was excited. I'd finally stopped being the nice guy husband everyone took for granted. The man who unclogged toilets while his wife played Candy Crush on company time. No, sir. This was my villain origin story, and I was going to have fun with it. I cleaned the kitchen, because revenge feels better in a spotless space, and then I poured another beer. To new beginnings, I said to nobody, raising the bottle like a toast to my own bad decisions. The funny thing? In that moment, I wasn't even sure if I wanted her back. What I wanted was balance. A little public embarrassment. A little humility. Maybe a trending hashtag. Because while she was out spreading sheets, I was about to air laundry. And believe me, when a betrayed husband stops crying and starts smiling, that's when the Raoul story begins. You know that moment when you're doing something so petty yet so therapeutic you start questioning whether you're healing or just evolving into your final villain form. Yeah, that was me, Brooks Walker, 43 years old, standing in my laundry room at midnight with a pile of dirty clothes that smelled like betrayal and bad decisions. See, after discovering my wife's extracurricular activities with her abs enthusiast assistant, I decided that revenge shouldn't be a single act. It should be a well-planned campaign. Think of me as the Martha Stewart of emotional warfare. My wife Clara thought she was having a normal Thursday night, working late at Bright Vista Media, which apparently now doubles as a dating app headquarters. Meanwhile, I went full CSI, Suburbia on her wardrobe. I wasn't just doing laundry, I was building evidence. Every piece of clothing told a story, and buddy, these garments had more drama than daytime television. First came the yoga pants. Oh, the yoga pants. Black, stretchy, and so worn they looked like they'd done more lunges than a personal trainer on commission. I held them up by the waistband and muttered, "You've seen things, haven't you?" They didn't answer, but the faint whiff of Jasper's cologne did. Next came the underwear. Not the regular, everyday ones with little bows and practicality. No, these were the lacy, mood lighting required kind. I didn't even know she owned half of them. I'm pretty sure some of those sets were new purchases, like recent affair budget kind of new. One still had the tag. The audacity. Then there was the mysterious white top that smelled like gym deodorant and a brand of cologne I'd never owned. I sniffed it once, gagged, and said out loud, "Well, that's not Tide." My dog, Cooper, tilted his head like he too was offended by the level of disrespect. It was around then that the crazy idea hit me. It started innocent enough. I thought, you know what would be funny? Washing all this and folding it neatly with labels like evidence say. But then I looked at the mountain of deceit on the floor, and something inside me snapped, in a productive way. Why settle for symbolic when you could go theatrical? That's when the plan was born. Take every piece of Clara's dirty laundry, literal and emotional, and bring it right to her workplace. Nothing says good morning, corporate, like a husband dragging a 50-pound bag of betrayal into your 10 a.m. meeting. Some men write angry letters. I do performance art. I could almost hear the narrator in a true crime documentary saying, "It was at this moment Brooks decided to stop being a victim and start being a headline." I poured myself another cup of coffee, the kind that tastes like ambition and bad ideas, and started sorting. Reds with reds, delicates in their own pile, and anything that looked like it had seen Jasper went straight into the public humiliation category. You ever fold clothes with righteous fury? It's cleansing. Therapeutic, even. Every shirt I folded was another memory I erased, another piece of her facade dismantled. I even ironed a few, because if you're going to expose someone, do it wrinkle-free. Around 1 a.m., I started narrating my own documentary. Here we see the suburban husband in his natural habitat, plotting the downfall of a cheating spouse while handling 40% polyester. I laughed so hard I scared myself. The neighbors probably thought I was losing it. Maybe I was, but I was losing it in style. Halfway through, I found a hoodie that wasn't mine, one of those tight gym hoodies that says, "I lift and I want you to know." The initials JL were stitched on the tag. Jasper Lee. My vision went red for a second, but then I smiled. "Perfect," I said, holding it up like a trophy. "You're coming with me, champ." I tossed it into the bag, already imagining the priceless look on his face when he saw it again, this time surrounded by Clara's unmentionables in front of her entire team. Oh, this wasn't just revenge. This was art with a moral. I started imagining the office scene in detail. The shocked interns, the gasping coworkers, the sound of Clara's PR career flatlining. I wanted witnesses. I wanted a crowd. If I was going to burn down 15 years of trust, I was at least going to roast some marshmallows over the flames. But here's the thing about revenge, it's exhausting. Around 2:30 a.m., I collapsed on the floor surrounded by detergent bottles and betrayal, wondering how I got here. One minute you're a loving husband reminding your kids to brush their teeth. The next you're knee-deep in your wife's Victoria's Secret collection plotting public humiliation like it's the Super Bowl. Cooper came over, sat next to me, and rested his head on my knee. "You still love her?" his eyes seemed to ask. "Love?" I said out loud. "Buddy, I'm way past love. I'm in the creative stage of grief." He licked my hand. Loyal, judgment-free, and smarter than half the people in that marriage. By 3 a.m., everything was folded, sorted, and packed neatly into one massive laundry bag, the kind you could fit a human body in. I tied it tight and labeled it with a sticky note that read, "Return to sender." I stood there, admiring my work like Michelangelo staring up at the Sistine Chapel. My magnum opus wasn't painted, it was bagged. I imagined Clara walking into her office tomorrow, sipping her overpriced latte, talking about quarterly goals, completely unaware her husband had just transformed into the Banksy of revenge. Then I heard the garage door creak. It was her. She was home. I froze, mid-step, holding the bag like a burglar caught with Santa's sack. Clara walked in, heels clicking, hair perfect, smelling like expensive perfume and deceit. "You're up late," she said, setting her purse down. "Couldn't sleep," I replied, keeping my voice calm. "Laundry night." She frowned. "At 3 a.m.? "Yup," I said, "just trying to keep things clean." The irony almost made me laugh. She didn't notice the sarcasm, or maybe she did but chose to ignore it. That's Clara for you. Ignoring warning signs is her superpower. She smiled, kissed my cheek, and said, "You're such a good husband." Oh, if only she knew. That's what they tell me. I replied, watching her head upstairs. I waited until I heard the shower running before whispering to the dog. She really has no idea. Cooper gave a quiet bark, which I took as approval. I dragged the bag out to my truck and tossed it in the back, covering it with a tarp. It looked like I was prepping for a home renovation or a low-budget kidnapping. I laughed again. Revenge makes you weird. I climbed into the driver's seat and checked my phone. 3:47 a.m. The world was asleep, but my mind was buzzing. I had one rule. If you're going to retaliate, do it with precision. No rage posts, no drunk voicemails. Just quiet, devastating execution. That's how legends are made. I drove around the block once, testing the thrill of it all. The hum of the engine, the soft glow of streetlights, the adrenaline, felt like I was in an Ocean's 11 montage, except instead of robbing a casino, I was robbing my wife's dignity. I parked back in the driveway, turned off the truck, and sat there for a while, imagining tomorrow's chaos. I could already see the office headlines. Bright Vista employees' marriage implodes during PowerPoint presentation. I might even trend under #domestic drama. When I finally went inside, Clara was asleep, curled up peacefully like she hadn't just detonated our marriage. I stared at her for a long time. Part of me wanted to wake her up and scream, "Why?" But another part, the smarter, pettier part, knew that silence was the weapon she'd never see coming. I lay down beside her and whispered, "Tomorrow's laundry day, honey. Hope you're ready." She stirred but didn't wake. Maybe somewhere deep down, she sensed the shift, that her days of control were numbered. Morning came too fast. Sunlight hit the blinds, birds were chirping, and I was wide awake, dressed in jeans and a dark hoodie, sipping coffee like a man with purpose. Clara kissed my cheek before leaving for work. "Big day today," she said. "Wish me luck." I smiled. "You're gonna need it." She laughed, thinking it was playful banter. I watched her drive off, then looked at the laundry bag in the garage, still sitting there like a ticking time bomb wrapped in cotton and polyester. "Showtime," I whispered. As I loaded it into the truck, I caught my reflection in the window. Tired eyes, messy hair, but damn if I didn't look like someone reborn. People talk about closure like it's some peaceful thing you find at a yoga retreat. Nah. Sometimes closure is dragging your wife's dirty laundry into her office with the confidence of a man who's got nothing left to lose. And me? I had just enough left to make it legendary. I don't know if there's a rule book for turning marital betrayal into guerrilla theater, but if there is, I photocopied it, scribbled "do not follow" in the margins, and color-coded the tabs. Call me thorough. After laundry day, which, for the record, was nothing short of cathartic and smelled faintly of fabric softener and schadenfreude, I spent the next morning drafting my battle plan like a man deciding whether to use a paintball gun or a flamethrower. Both effective. One probably arrests you, and both get you great footage. I'm Brooks Walker, and in the war of the heart, I've decided to be both tactician and morale booster. The battlefield? Bright Vista Media, a glass and steel palace where transparency is marketing speak and moral fiber is a seldom ordered side on the company cafeteria menu. She'd built her brand on the idea that the company was authentic, and that's exactly what I plan to amplify, authentically. First order of business, attire. You don't storm a corporate compound in a disgruntled dad hoodie, unless you want to be memed into oblivion. I did a lap through my closet like a man picking his armor for a Renaissance fair, and settled on a dark blazer, sharp jeans, and shoes with just enough polish to suggest I still had job prospects beyond passive-aggressive viral stunts. I looked like someone who could either run a meeting or start a respectable podcast. Next, the prop. I considered every option. Karaoke machine with irreplaceable cued, a slideshow of receipts, maybe even a billboard truck. But practicality and style won. A heavy-duty laundry bag, monogrammed in my head as Exhibit A, stuffed full with Clara's most incriminating textiles, and a hoodie with the initials JL stitched in like a mocking badge. That hoodie felt poetic justice. It practically hummed with arrogance and protein powder. In the passenger seat, Cooper sat like a small, judgmental general, and I swear he understood the gravity of the mission. I had Leon on speed dial, my lawyer friend whose ethics are flexible, but whose loyalty is suspiciously unwavering. He was excited in a way that made me half proud and half deeply concerned for his social calendar. "Brooks," he said, voice crackling with laughter, "this is dumb genius. Don't do anything illegal. But also, if you do, call me first. I promise nothing." Next up, reconnaissance. I arrived at Bright Vista an hour early, because the early bird gets the footage and the late bird gets postponed by HR. The building looked like a startup that had eaten a designer magazine. Glass everywhere, succulents on every flat surface, and motivational posters about synergy that would have made a used car salesman blush. The receptionist, a woman named Dana who smiled like she'd been trained at charm school and deployed at the front desk, greeted me with that professional confusion reserved for people who show up to work with a packed gym bag or a suspiciously large casserole. "Hi, can I help you?" she asked, already deciding whether to be helpful or call security. I flashed my most innocuous smile and said, "I'm here to drop something off for Clara Walker." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second. Either she'd read the memo about Clara's late-night meetings, or she'd recognize the look of a man who'd watched his marriage dissolve in an inbox. "Name?" she asked, a polite bouncer. "Brooks Walker," I said. "Hubby? Husband? Mister?" "Deliveries say from home." She typed something, glanced at the screen, and then asked, "Do you have an appointment?" That's when I leaned in like we were conspiring on a secret. "Does Destiny need an appointment?" I asked, Because drama loves a rhetorical question. Dana hesitated, which in corporate speak means she was consulting the manual titled, How to Stay Neutral in Spousal Warfare. I'll buzz her, she said, because she had a spine of flexible plastic. While we waited, I took in the office vibe. Millennials with rolled sleeves and disposable cold brew, a whiteboard with half-erased campaign slogans that were probably expensive, and a fish tank. Because nothing says we care like fish doing their best impression of a calm workplace. Someone walked past in branded leggings, probably an influencer who also did web design on weekends. I imagined Clara in the center of it all, exuding executive confidence, her PR smile primed, unaware that her domestic theater troupe was assembling in the lobby. The elevator pinged, and out floated a cloud of perfume and the sound of confident shoes. Clara swept in like a woman untouchable. High heels, blazer, hair that had clearly been blessed by a stylist, and Jasper behind her, the human embodiment of a protein shake, looking like he was about to pitch an app called Abs and Ads. He had that look of someone who thought the world owed him something and was figuring it might be my wife. My heart didn't pound. That was for amateurs. I felt the calm right before a chuckle, like a man about to test the universe's best revenge taco. Clara's smile, when she saw me, was a dodge. Brooks? What are you doing here? She asked, a practiced tone of surprise in her voice that suggested she'd rehearsed it for focus groups. Oh, dropping off the laundry, I said, casually, letting the word hang in the air like an unsent text. Jasper blinked like someone who'd been told to pivot from selfie to responsibility mid-swipe. Clara's PR instincts kicked in. She glanced around, looking for damage control. That's when I laid out phase 1, show, don't tweet. I hoisted the bag like a victorious athlete and walked past glass cubicles, past a wall of framed awards about innovation and disruption, and into their open-plan paradise, where the hum of productivity met the slight whiff of artisan coffee. Phones paused mid-scroll. Laptops got a touch of drama. People turned, because human beings are trained to watch when someone treats a corporate meeting like an improv stage. I could see Jasper's face go from gym model smug to the precise shade of embarrassment you only get when your ego meets public opinion. Clara's jaw set and her eyes flashed. Anger, yes, but also the calculation of a woman who had spent years managing brand narratives and was now forced to face one of her own. Meeting stopped. Someone whispered, "Is that?" And 3 people started recording with their phones like they were fulfilling a civic duty. I placed the bag, ceremonially, on the conference table, the polyester equivalent of a gavel. It sagged under the weight of intimacy and cotton blends, and for a moment the room smelled like detergent and betrayal, a scent I'd call eau de consequence. I didn't scream. I didn't fling accusations like confetti. Instead, I used the deadpan of a man who knew chaos is more devastating when delivered with impeccable timing. I thought I'd drop off Clara's laundry, I said, loud enough for the entire office to hear, but measured like a news anchor. She's been working so hard. Figured she'd appreciate the help. Murmurs rose like warm steam. Someone laughed, nervous laughter, the kind you hear in a courtroom before someone confesses. The HR director, who had the uncanny talent of looking like she'd swallowed a handbook on conflict resolution, rose and said, "Sir, you can't." And I cut her off with the kind of smile that said, "Oh, we're past rules." Jasper's face had the distinct shade of someone who realizes his social currency just plummeted and he probably needed to update his life choices. Clara, on the other hand, looked like a lawyer revising a closing argument on the fly. That's the thing about corporate warfare. You need the crowd. Corporations are built on appearances. I was about to make theirs uncomfortable and extraordinarily honest. I let the silence linger, because silence is a weapon as old as time and twice as effective when you have a bag full of bras on a table. Phones recorded, cameras streamed, and somewhere in the server room a printer finally stopped printing meaningless PowerPoint slides in confusion. I could see the wheels turning in people's heads, speculation, gossip, career calculus. The damage was already being assessed in real time, and I was oddly proud. This wasn't just about humiliation. It was about exposure, about showing that the polished brand they'd all embraced was just as messy behind the curtain as any suburban kitchen. I'd planned for shock. I'd planned for a PR scramble. I hadn't planned for how weirdly gratifying it felt to be the man who forced a room full of professionals to consider the domestic consequences of their office romances. As I stood there, blazer slightly rumpled from exertion, I realized I'd crossed a line from which there was no easy return, mine or theirs. But then again, I hadn't wanted easy. I wanted real. I wanted to watch people who sell authenticity for a living confront actual truth. And in a world of filters, a raw moment like that feels downright revolutionary. The receptionist later told me she'd never seen the Slack channel go that quiet. The interns later described it as intense, like Monday, but worse. Jasper later deleted his accounts and probably considered a relocation to a country with fewer social norms. Clara later called me every name in 3 languages and a few I didn't know. But right then, in that sunlit conference room, with the laundry bag splayed open like the last chapter of a guilty novel, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not victory, too petty a word, but clarity. I'd started this thing as a hurt guy with a full laundry bag and ended up an unwilling playwright staging the slow, very public unraveling of someone who had lied in plain text. Corporate warfare, it turns out, is messy, loud, and strangely civilized when you do it with style. And I was just getting started. There are moments in life when you can literally feel your dignity pack its bags and move to a different zip code. For some people, it's when they get dumped by text. For others, it's tripping on stage at graduation. For me, it was dragging a 50-pound bag of my wife's dirty laundry into the glass-walled conference room of Bright Vista Media, while half the office live-tweeted their confusion. The elevator ride up was cinematic. The soft music played some light jazz that felt offensive to my mission, so I hummed the Imperial March under my breath instead. Every floor that passed, I imagined the audience waiting. Clara, Jasper, and a bunch of co-workers about to learn that working closely meant something entirely different after hours. The elevator doors opened with that cheerful corporate ding, and I stepped into the corridor like a man delivering divine judgment wrapped in polyester. The bag thudded behind me as I dragged it along the marble floor, the sound echoing like guilt in an empty church. People looked up from their monitors, wide eyes, mid-sip coffees, a guy dropping his pen in slow motion. "Morning," I said casually, like I wasn't about to detonate a marriage in 4K. "Delivery for Mrs. Walker." The receptionist from earlier, Dana, blinked like she was seeing a ghost who also had a Home Depot membership. Sir, you can't." "Relax," I said, flashing her a reassuring smile. "I'm family, just returning some of her personal effects." I pressed my access badge from her gym membership, the one she'd left in my truck cup holder, against the security scanner. It beeped green. Sweet poetic irony. The double doors slid open, and I was in. The air conditioning hit me like courtroom tension. Inside, the company's quarterly meeting was in full swing. Rows of employees faced a massive presentation screen that said Q2 growth and future projections, but they were about to witness a very different kind of growth, one involving my spine. Clara stood near the head of the table, wearing her CEO Barbie outfit, sleek white blouse, pencil skirt, and that confident posture that said, "I manipulate investors for breakfast." Right next to her was Jasper, the human bicep, leaning against the wall like he'd invented PowerPoint. "Hey, honey," I called out. Heads turned like dominoes. The room fell silent except for the low hum of the projector fan. Clara froze mid-sentence, her smile glitching like bad Wi-Fi. Jasper's face went from smug to oh in half a second. "Forgot something at home." I continued cheerfully, dragging the laundry bag across the polished floor. The squeak of fabric against tile echoed through the room, followed by the dull thud as I dropped it beside her desk. I followed. I stood straight, brushed off imaginary lint, and nodded politely to the stunned audience. Team effort's important, right? So I figured since she's been working so closely with her assistant, maybe he could help her sort through this. Then, with the flourish of a man signing the Declaration of Independence, I unzipped the bag. It was glorious. A waterfall of yoga pants, lacy lingerie, and Jasper's gym hoodie cascaded across the conference table like the world's most scandalous fashion show. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Someone dropped a coffee mug. It shattered dramatically, like it was in on the bit. A few people choked back laughter. One intern mouthed, "Oh my God," while another discreetly hit record on her phone like she'd just stumbled upon free entertainment. Clara's face turned every shade of red known to Pantone. Jasper looked ready to teleport. I tilted my head, channeling pure calm chaos. Since you already know her sizes, I said to Jasper, I trust you'll make sure everything's folded properly. Silence. Real silence. The kind that hums in your bones. Then came the whispers, the phone stealthily snapping photos, and the faintest sound of someone trying, and failing, not to snort laugh. I gave a small bow. Laundry's all about teamwork, folks. Remember that. The HR manager, a pale man in a beige suit who looked like he fainted recreationally, stood up. Sir, you need to leave. Oh, absolutely, I said with exaggerated politeness. Wouldn't want to interrupt this clean workplace culture. The pun landed. Someone laughed out loud. The man in beige looked like he wished the carpet would swallow him whole. Clara regained her voice. Brooks, what the hell are you doing? She hissed, trying to sound composed, but her voice trembled like a badly tuned violin. Oh, just being supportive, I said, smiling. You said transparency was one of your company's core values. Figured I'd contribute. The crowd collectively inhaled like they'd all just witnessed a slap in real time. Jasper tried to speak, but all he managed was, this isn't. He's twisting. I interrupted. Buddy, you've been doing all the twisting. I'm just unrolling the truth. Dana, bless her chaotic heart, was peeking through the glass door, hand over her mouth, half horrified and half ready to text the group chat. I winked at her. The conference room was pure pandemonium now. HR whispering about protocols, marketing pretending to take notes, and one middle-aged accountant openly eating popcorn from her purse. Clara straightened up, trying to reclaim her composure. This is harassment, she declared. You've crossed a line. Oh, Clara, I said softly, leaning in just enough for the crowd to hear. You crossed it first. I'm just highlighting it in neon. Security finally arrived. Two guys who looked too young to have handled anything beyond printer malfunctions. One said, Sir, you need to come with us. Like he was rehearsing for a cop drama. Sure, I replied easily. But before I do, I reached into my pocket and pulled out my phone. You guys might want to check your company's trending status. #DirtyLaundryGate is about to hit the internet. I wasn't bluffing. Turns out, when you send a few screenshots to a friend who blogs about workplace culture, things move fast. The HR guy looked like his soul left his body. I nodded politely and headed toward the door, security awkwardly trailing behind me. As I stepped out into the hallway, applause broke out, actual applause. A few people clapped slowly at first, then more joined in. Whether it was respect or fear, I didn't care. I turned, gave a theatrical bow, and said, Remember, folks, don't mix business with pleasure unless you're prepared for spin cycle consequences. Then I left, dragging the now empty bag behind me like a victory flag. The walk to the parking lot felt euphoric, like a villain origin montage with background music by Revenge-era Taylor Swift. My heart pounded, adrenaline surged, and for once, I didn't feel like the guy left holding the emotional mop. I tossed the bag into my truck, climbed in, and just sat there laughing. That kind of uncontrollable, cathartic laughter that comes when your life is simultaneously collapsing and peaking. My phone buzzed. 8 missed calls from Clara, 2 from unknown, and 1 from Leon, my lawyer friend, who had apparently seen the live footage already. His voicemail was just him laughing for 30 straight seconds before saying, You're trending, bro. Call me before CNN does. I drove home, every red light feeling like a slow-motion victory lap. People always say revenge doesn't satisfy you. Those people never dumped a bag of dirty secrets in a boardroom. I pulled into the driveway, killed the engine, and leaned back. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked different, lighter, freer, maybe a little insane, but in that might start a podcast about healing kind of way. Back inside, Cooper met me at the door, tail wagging like I'd just won Best in Show. Mission accomplished, I told him, scratching his ears. He barked once, which I took as approval. I poured myself a drink, not whiskey this time, but coffee. Strong, black, and full of aftertaste. My phone kept buzzing with notifications, tweets, DMs, even an old college buddy texting. Bro, are you the laundry guy? I didn't reply. I just sipped my coffee and watched the morning light crawl through the blinds. For the first time in months, my house felt mine again. Then came the knock on the door. I didn't even flinch. It was Clara, of course, still in her conference outfit, mascara streaked, phone in hand. "You humiliated me," she snapped the moment I opened the door. "Correction," I said, setting my mug down. "You humiliated yourself. I just provided the PowerPoint." She glared at me, chest heaving. "Do you realize what you've done? I could lose my job, my reputation. You mean the one you built on lies?" I interrupted. "Don't worry. I think the rebranding opportunities are endless. Maybe start a podcast, How to Cheat with Confidence." She slapped me. Not hard, just enough to say, "I'm out of arguments." I laughed, not mockingly, but like someone who'd finally stopped playing defense. "You done?" I asked calmly. She looked at me, eyes glassy with anger and disbelief. "You're insane." "Maybe," I said, shrugging. "But at least I'm honest about it." She stormed off to her car, tires screeching like punctuation to our marriage obituary. I watched her go, feeling nothing. No regret, no rage. Just that eerie calm that comes when you realize you've already hit rock bottom and started redecorating. The internet, meanwhile, was on fire. Bright Vista's official page was flooded with comments like transparency goals and when HR meets HBO. A clip from the meeting had hit social media, me dragging the bag, Clara's shocked face, the avalanche of laundry, and the world had opinions. Some called me petty, others called me a hero. I called it Tuesday. By evening, my phone had buzzed so much it felt like a massage chair. Leon texted, "Dude, investors are panicking. Bright Vista's stock dropped 4%. You're a market event." I couldn't stop laughing. I'd always dreamed of impacting the economy, just didn't think it'd happen via lingerie and revenge. That night, as the world kept talking, I sat in the quiet of my living room, sipping a beer and scratching Cooper's ears. The dishwasher hummed, the clock ticked, and my life, messy, loud, broken, suddenly felt weirdly peaceful. Clara's empire might have been collapsing, but mine? Mine was just starting to rebuild, one sarcastic sip at a time. Somewhere, deep down, I knew this wasn't the end. Oh no, this was just intermission. Because if there's one thing I've learned, it's that when a man stops begging to be respected and starts acting like he already deserves it, the world has to adjust its volume. And I wasn't planning to go quiet anytime soon. There's a very particular kind of silence that hits after you go viral for the wrong reasons. It's the sound of your phone vibrating every 10 seconds while you stare at the ceiling wondering whether you're trending because people think you're a hero or because they think you need therapy. Spoiler, it's both. I woke up to my name plastered across social media like a new Netflix documentary title, Laundry Guy, the husband who snapped, folded, and conquered. My DMs were split evenly between divorce lawyers offering discounts and random strangers calling me king. Even my mom texted, "Heard about the laundry thing. Don't do anything dumb, but also proud of you." By 9 a.m., Clara had called 14 times. By call 15, I blocked her. The dopamine of silence? Delicious. Instead, I rang my friend Leon Hart, the one man I knew who could turn a federal investigation into a punchline. Leon's a lawyer, technically. His moral compass spins like a roulette wheel, but somehow he always lands on make it legal, make it funny. He picked up mid-laughter. "Brooks, I swear to God, you've outdone yourself. I thought the time you tried to fake a golf injury to skip Christmas dinner was peak performance. But this is art. You broke the internet." "Am I getting sued?" I asked, because someone had to ask the grown-up question. "Not yet," he said. "But HR probably wants to hold hands with you and Clara over a table of non-disclosure agreements. I recommend you start every sentence with allegedly. It makes you sound sophisticated." I sighed. "Leon, I think I might have destroyed her career." "Destroyed?" he said, scoffing. "Buddy, you laundered it. And if you're worried about optics, don't. America loves a man who loses it with purpose." That line stuck with me. Loses it with purpose. It sounded like a campaign slogan for midlife crises. Sure enough, 2 hours later, my phone lit up with an unknown number. HR from Bright Vista Media. Her voice had that mix of politeness and panic that only corporate professionals can pull off. "Mr. Walker," she began, "this is Sandra from Human Resources. We'd like to schedule a conversation regarding yesterday's incident." "Incident?" I said, feigning innocence. "You mean the one where I accidentally improved company morale?" She didn't laugh. It's important we address the matter professionally. Sure, I said. But just to clarify, are we talking about me or my wife's professional relationship with her assistant? Dead silence. I swear I could hear her soul buffering. I'll send you a calendar invite, she finally said. Looking forward to it, I replied. Should I bring detergent? Or are we done cleaning things up? Click. She hung up. Corporate humor, tragically underrated. After that, I decided to do what any responsible adult would do in a scandal. Get brunch. I hit up a diner downtown, the kind where waitresses call you hun, and coffee refills flow like forgiveness. I scrolled through the comments section under a trending clip of me dragging that laundry bag across the Bright Vista conference room. The top comment, bro didn't air her laundry, he held a TED Talk. The second, justice smells like Downey. I laughed so hard the waitress asked if I was okay. Better than I've been in years, I said. By the time I got home, Clara's lawyer had emailed me a cease and desist letter written with enough passive-aggressive energy to power a small city. It started with, Dear Mr. Walker, your recent actions have caused emotional distress and reputational harm, and ended with a request for me to publicly retract defamatory insinuations. I forwarded it to Leon with the subject line, fan mail. He called within minutes, wheezing from laughter. Brooks, you're living in a sitcom. Don't sign anything yet. Give it 24 hours. She's spiraling, and Bright Vista's board is having an aneurysm trying to decide whether to fire her or promote her for authenticity. I blinked. Promote her? You'd be amazed what crisis management experience does for a resume these days, Leon said. Meanwhile, your stock as the wronged husband is through the roof. I'd strike while the iron's hot. Write a memoir, do a podcast, call it Press Cycle, How I Wash the Truth. Leon. Okay, he said, but at least make a statement. Something classy. Like, no comment, but my laundry's clean. It was evil. It was perfect. I posted exactly that on X, formerly Twitter, with a picture of my coffee mug next to folded towels. Within an hour, 50,000 likes. A journalist even emailed me asking if I'd comment for an article titled Revenge, Romance, and Rebranding, When Husbands Go Viral. I politely declined because, frankly, my popcorn wasn't ready. Meanwhile, the fallout at Bright Vista was biblical. According to LinkedIn gossip, yes, that's a thing. Jasper had been placed on leave, Clara's department was under review, and HR had commenced an internal investigation. Translation, everyone was freaking out. The company's stock dropped 3% overnight, which made Leon text me. Congratulations, you're officially an economic factor. I should have felt bad, maybe, but honestly, I felt liberated. For years, I'd been the invisible man in my own marriage, chauffeur, handyman, emotional Wi-Fi provider. And now, I was laundry guy, internet legend, domestic avenger, patron saint of cheated on spouses everywhere. People were sending me virtual beers. A merch store had already popped up selling t-shirts that said, Fold, don't flinch. Still, I knew it couldn't all be memes and victory laps. So I called Leon again. What's the move legally? I asked. Lay low, he said. But also, maybe change the locks. I already did. Good. And freeze the joint accounts. Done. Nice. Then feed her fancy skincare products to your dog. Already handled that too. There was a pause. Brooks, he said solemnly, I have never been prouder. The next morning, I woke up to find a news van parked outside my house. Local station. I peeked through the blinds like a man in witness protection. The reporter was doing a live segment titled Laundry Day Scandal Rocks Bright Vista Media. My neighbor, Carol, was in the background watering her plants, trying to look disinterested while obviously eavesdropping. I texted Leon, now what? He replied, smile. You're already trending. Might as well look good doing it. So I threw on a robe, grabbed my coffee, and walked outside like I'd just won the lottery. The reporter turned, startled, and said, Mr. Walker, care to comment? I took a sip of coffee, stared straight into the camera, and said, I just hope everyone learns to separate their colors and tell the truth. Then I winked and walked back inside. Twitter exploded again. That's the kind of peace that only comes when you've set something on fire and watched it burn clean. Not destruction, clarity. For 15 years, I'd been folding her laundry, fixing her mistakes, smoothing her chaos. Now, for the first time, the mess was hers alone to handle. As the credits rolled on the day, I texted Leon one final thing. You think revenge makes you feel better. Turns out, it just makes you feel real. He replied instantly. And sometimes, real is better than married. He wasn't wrong. There are bad days. And then there's the day you find out your marriage, your reputation, and your household group chat have all made it to trending news under a hashtag. Hashtag Dirty Laundry Gate had officially become the internet's new favorite soap opera. The memes were relentless. Someone photoshopped me onto a Tide commercial with the caption, Brooks Walker, removing stains since 2025. Another one had Clara's face over a detergent bottle that said new formula, now with extra lies. I should have been embarrassed, but instead, I was sipping my morning coffee like a man whose Karma subscription finally paid off. The internet was having the time of its life, but Bright Vista Media? Not so much. Their official page turned into a battlefield overnight. PR statements were flying, employees were taking breaks for mental health, and Jasper had deleted everything. Instagram, LinkedIn, probably his dignity too. According to the Gossip Mill and Leon, my ever-reliable lawyer/gossip correspondent, Bright Vista investors had demanded a comprehensive ethics review. Translation, they were scrubbing the company cleaner than my wife's conscience was ever going to be. I was halfway through my second cup of coffee when my doorbell rang. Through the peepholes stood Clara, mascara smudged, hair in disarray, and eyes redder than a stoplight after a tequila binge. She looked like Karma had just mugged her in the parking lot. I opened the door slowly, mostly because I wanted to savor this moment. You look great, I said deadpan. Corporate chic with a hint of chaos. She pushed past me, waving her phone. You humiliated me, Brooks, she shouted, voice shaking. You humiliated us. Correction, I said, leaning against the counter. You humiliated yourself. I just provided the PowerPoint. Her jaw dropped. Do you think this is funny? I think it's tragic, I said, taking a sip of coffee. Tragic that you thought you could cheat on me with a guy who probably says leg day during sex. That one hit. She flinched. You've destroyed my career. Clara, I said calmly. You destroyed your own career the moment you started treating the office like an after-hours motel. I just gave your investors the honesty your PR campaigns promised. She started crying. The loud, theatrical kind where every sob sounds like an unpaid invoice. Once upon a time, that would have gutted me. Today, I just watched. You're cruel, she said. Cruel? I raised an eyebrow. Cruel is making your husband feel like a roommate while you're sexting your secretary. Cruel is lying to your kids about late meetings while you're at Jasper's apartment pretending to brainstorm. I'm not cruel, Clara. I'm creative. She threw her hands up. So that's it. You're just done? You're not even going to try to fix this? Oh, I'll fix it, I said, smiling. Just not with you. That was when she broke. She sat down on the couch, shoulders shaking, and whispered, Everyone hates me. I shrugged. Not everyone. I'm sure Jasper's still got a soft spot for you. Well, metaphorically. Maybe not professionally anymore. That earned me a glare that could have melted steel. She stood up, wiped her eyes, and pointed at me. You think you've won, don't you? You think people are laughing with you? They're laughing at you, Brooks. You're a joke. I set my coffee down and walked closer, stopping just a few feet away. Maybe. But at least I'm a joke with good timing. She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. I let out a deep breath, looked at Cooper, and said, You think I went too far? He tilted his head like he was debating it. Yeah, I sighed. Me too. But damn if it didn't feel good. By noon, my phone was a circus. Bright Vista's HR director left me a voicemail that sounded like a hostage reading a script. Mr. Walker, we'd like to discuss a resolution to this situation. Translation, please stop making us trend. I deleted it. Then Leon called, laughing so hard I could barely understand him. Brooks, buddy, you are officially a folk hero. Do you realize people are using your face on stickers? Stickers? Yeah, man. Etsy shops are cashing in. There's one that says, Fold the drama, and another with you holding a laundry bag like Thor's hammer. You're a phenomenon. I didn't sign up to be a meme, Leon. Too late, he said between laughs. You're public domain now. Later that day, I took Cooper for a walk. People recognized me. Not from PDA meetings or the neighborhood BBQs. No, from the internet. One woman driving by slowed down, rolled down her window, and yelled, We stand a petty king, before speeding off. Another guy at the park fist bumped me and said, Legend. I didn't even know his name. I was officially that guy, poster boy for marital revenge with a side of sarcasm. But here's the thing. Fame, even the ridiculous kind, gets heavy fast. By the third day, the reporters stopped camping outside, the hashtags started fading, and the comments turned philosophical. Did he go too far? Was it justified? What about the children? I read them all. And somewhere between the memes and the moral debates, I realized something. No matter how much you win, it doesn't erase the ache. Betrayal leaves residue, like that one coffee mug that never gets quite clean no matter how many times you scrub it. I sat alone that night, nursing a beer and scrolling through old photos of Clara and the kids. 15 years of life. Vacations, birthdays, stupid Halloween costumes. I wasn't angry anymore, just tired. That's the part people never show you in movies. The quiet after revenge. The silence where the adrenaline fades and you're left wondering what comes next. Then, as if the universe had impeccable comedic timing, Clara called again. I answered this time, just to see what she'd say. Her voice was smaller, softer. They suspended me, she said. Bright Vista. Yes, she sniffed. They're conducting a review. The board says I violated ethical standards. Jasper's gone. HR's documenting everything. My lawyer says I might lose my shares. I didn't say anything. I just listened. I don't have anyone else to talk to, she said quietly. Everyone's turned against me. I sighed. You should have thought about that before you turned against me. Silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, I made a mistake. Yeah, I said. You did. For a moment, I almost felt bad. Almost. But then I remembered those texts. Those heart emojis. The smugness in Jasper's tone. And suddenly, the pity evaporated. Good luck, Clara, I said, and hung up. I poured myself another beer, sat on the porch, and watched the sunset paint the sky gold and orange. Cooper rested at my feet, tail wagging lazily. My neighbor Carol walked by, pretending not to stare but clearly dying to ask about the scandal. Evening, Brooks, she said sweetly. Evening, I replied. You holding up okay? Better than my marriage, I said. She snorted, then blushed. Well, good for you. She never deserved you anyway. Thanks, I said, raising my bottle. To clean breaks and clean clothes. She laughed, waved, and walked on. I leaned back, smiling at the absurdity of it all. My life had turned into a meme. My wife was on corporate probation. And yet, for the first time in years, I felt lighter. Free even. Revenge hadn't fixed everything, but it had flipped the power dynamic. And once you taste that freedom, you don't go back. That night, Leon texted again. So what's next, laundry legend? I stared at the message for a while before replying. I don't know. Maybe something small. Quiet. Like peace. He replied instantly. Boring. You should open a laundromat. Call it Fresh Start. I chuckled, set my phone down, and took one last sip of beer. The world had finally stopped spinning so fast. I'd been the fool, the punchline, and now, weirdly enough, the hero of my own story. Maybe revenge wasn't supposed to heal you. It just cleared enough space for healing to start. And as I drifted off to sleep that night, I thought, maybe tomorrow, I'll actually start doing the laundry again. This time for me. By Monday morning, I was officially a celebrity in my neighborhood. Which, for the record, sounds cool until you realize it mostly means people you barely know pretend to take out their trash whenever you step outside just to get the latest update. Mrs. Patterson, my 80-year-old neighbor, had practically turned her porch into a CNN newsroom. Every time I walked past, she'd wave her phone and say, "They showed you on the morning segment again, Brooks. You looked so calm while destroying her. My daughter says you're iconic." Iconic. I guess that's one way to describe a man who weaponized laundry. The internet had cooled down slightly by then, but the damage was permanent. Bright Vista Media had gone from a leader in creative integrity to that company with the cheating scandal and the yoga pants husband. They tried to spin it, of course, released a vague statement about internal restructuring and employee accountability. Translation, they were frantically trying to clean a stain with hand sanitizer. I should have been done by now, coasting on my viral fame, maybe signing a book deal titled Folded, Not Broken. But Clara wasn't finished. She showed up again. This time, not in tears, in armor. Hair perfectly straightened, tailored blazer, the kind of heels that announce, "I'm here to reclaim my dignity." Except this wasn't a rom-com. I didn't have a boom box or a change of heart waiting by the door. I was in gym shorts, eating cold pizza straight from the box. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. She walked in without asking. "We need to talk," she said flatly. I sighed, took another bite, and gestured toward the couch. "Careful, that's the seat of betrayal." She ignored me, sat down, and crossed her legs like we were in a deposition. "My PR team says I should release a joint statement." I blinked. "A what?" "A joint statement," she repeated. "Something neutral that says we're working through personal matters privately. It'll help restore my brand and—" I started laughing. Not a chuckle, not a smirk. Full, shoulders shaking, pizza almost falling out of my mouth laughter. She stared at me like I'd lost it. Maybe I had, but at least I was enjoying it. "You want me," I said, catching my breath, "to help you restore your brand? Clara, your brand cheated on me with its assistant. It's not a rebrand, it's a recall." Her eyes hardened. "You're enjoying this, aren't you?" "I'm not enjoying it," I said, still smirking. "I'm savoring it, like a fine wine that's aged in betrayal and poor decision-making." She exhaled sharply. "You think you've won, but this affects you too. We still share assets, Brooks. The house, the accounts, the company stock." "Correction," I said, raising a finger. "We shared assets. I froze those accounts the day you decided your marriage vows were optional. As for the house, well, congratulations. You get the guest room. For visiting rights only." Her jaw clenched. "You can't just—" "Oh, I can," I said calmly, setting the pizza down and leaning forward. "But lucky for you, I'm not completely heartless. Which is why I've prepared a counteroffer." Her brows furrowed. "A what?" "A counteroffer," I repeated, sliding a neatly printed document from under a pile of mail on the table. Leon helped me draft it. He called it equal parts genius and deranged, which I took as high praise. Clara took the paper, scanning the title, Post-Affair Partnership Agreement. She looked up at me like I'd lost my mind. "You're kidding." "Not even a little," I said. "It's simple. 2 options." I sat back, crossing my arms like a CEO in an HR video. "Option 1. You publicly admit your little mistake, resign from Bright Vista, and move somewhere quiet where no one recognizes you. Maybe Idaho. Great potatoes, zero paparazzi." She rolled her eyes. "And option 2. "Option 2, I said, grinning. "You stay married to me, but under new management." She laughed bitterly. "New management?" "Yup," I said, tapping the paper. "You handle every single household duty. Laundry, cooking, school runs, taxes, grocery shopping, pet care, you name it. Meanwhile, I pursue my dream of opening a coffee shop downtown. You remember that dream, right? The one you called a waste of potential right before you bought a Peloton you used twice." She scoffed. "You're insane." "Possibly," I said. "But you cheated on me, so clearly we're both making bold choices." She stood, pacing. "You think I'm going to give up my career to play housewife?" "No," I said. "I think you're going to do whatever costs you less. And right now, a divorce costs half your company's shares, half your assets, and half your public image, which, let's face it, is already hanging by a thread." Her nostrils flared. "You wouldn't." I grinned. "Clara, I once carried your dirty underwear into a board meeting. Do you really want to test how far I'll go?" That shut her up for a minute. She stared at the paper again, weighing humiliation against financial ruin. The silence stretched. Cooper wandered in, dropped his toy at her feet, and gave her a look like even he was judging her. "Fine," she muttered finally. "Fine, I'll do it." I raised an eyebrow. "Option 2. "Yes," she snapped. "But this doesn't mean you've won. It means I'm being strategic." "Of course," I said, smiling. "That's what all defeated CEOs say before stepping down from emotional leadership." She glared. "You're impossible." "I'm consistent," I said, standing up. "And just to clarify, this arrangement starts immediately. Breakfast at 7. Dishes done before 9. Kids picked up by 3. And please, for the love of sanity, don't burn the toast like you burned our marriage." Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. I think that's when she realized the tables had officially turned. She grabbed her purse and stormed out. The sound of her car peeling out of the driveway was music to my ears. I turned to Cooper. "Well, buddy," I said, scratching behind his ears. "Looks like we're getting home-cooked meals again. Possibly inedible, but home-cooked." He wagged his tail in approval. That night, Leon called. "Tell me you didn't actually make her sign that thing." "She didn't sign it," I said. "Yet." but she agreed verbally. He cackled. You're running your marriage like a merger. That's psychotic. I love it. I call it accountability with benefits, I said. The next morning, I woke up to the smell of something. It wasn't coffee. It wasn't food. It was chaos. I walked into the kitchen to find Clara wearing one of my old t-shirts, hair tied up, flipping what I think was supposed to be a pancake. Smoke billowed from the stove like a fog machine at a middle school dance. What are you doing? I asked. Making breakfast, she said through gritted teeth. Happy now. I looked at the pan, then at her. Ecstatic. Truly. The smoke alarms just applause. She glared, but the corner of her mouth twitched. Maybe she realized the absurdity of it all. Maybe she was just too tired to fight. Either way, we ate. Burnt pancakes, awkward silence, and all. The kids shuffled in halfway through, confused but curious. Mom's cooking? Sophie asked, wide-eyed. Voluntarily. Yeah, I said, sipping my coffee. It's part of a new program called Consequences 101. Clara shot me a look, but I ignored it. The kids giggled. It was the first breakfast in years that felt like something other than tension and pretense. As she cleaned up, muttering under her breath about ridiculous deals, I leaned against the counter, watching her. For the first time, she wasn't in control, and surprisingly, that didn't make her weaker. It made her real, flawed, human. That night, I got an email from her PR team. Please confirm that Mrs. Walker has fulfilled the household duties as per your verbal agreement. I laughed so hard I nearly fell off the couch. I replied, progress pending. Pancake quality below expectations. Leon texted later, you're officially the pettiest genius alive. Maybe he was right. But here's the thing. After years of being ignored, dismissed, and quietly disrespected, I'd finally found my voice. And if that voice happened to narrate like a sitcom and sound slightly unhinged, so be it. The next morning, Clara was up early, making eggs this time. They were edible. She didn't smile, but she didn't scowl either. Small progress. So, I said casually, when's your next Bright Vista board meeting? She shot me a death glare. They postponed it. Indefinitely. Ah, I said, sipping my coffee. Guess they're still cleaning up the mess. She didn't respond. But when she sat down, I noticed something new in her eyes. Not love, not regret. Something else, respect, maybe. Or the early stages of realizing that actions have consequences. Enjoy your coffee, she muttered. Oh, I am, I said with a grin. For the first time in years. And I meant it. They say karma comes for everyone, but nobody mentions it sometimes arrives wearing an apron and holding a burnt spatula. 3 weeks into our little post-affair partnership agreement, and Clara had gone from CEO powerhouse to suburban mom, doing school runs and laundry like she was being punished by divine irony. Every morning I'd sit at the kitchen counter, sipping coffee from my #LaundryLegend mug, while watching her fight with the toaster like it owed her money. It was therapeutic. The same woman who used to give keynote speeches about efficiency couldn't even manage to make breakfast without setting off the smoke alarm. Eli's lunchbox. I'd ask casually. She'd freeze, mid-scramble, and mutter something about getting to it. Sophie, our 15-year-old, would whisper, Mom, you're gonna burn it again, and I'd choke back a laugh so hard it probably added 5 years to my life. Watching her juggle chaos she used to delegate was pure cinematic gold. The irony wasn't lost on her either. One morning, while she was folding laundry, she looked up and said, Do you enjoy watching me struggle? I smiled. Oh, tremendously. It's like a live-action redemption arc. To her credit, she didn't crumble. Clara was too proud for that. She threw herself into her new role with the same ruthless determination she once used to destroy small competitors. She started reading mommy blogs, making grocery lists, even downloading budget apps. The kids were confused but amused. Is Mom okay? Eli asked one night. She keeps saying organic and crying over detergent commercials. Yeah, I said. She's just detoxing from corporate poison. It's healthy. Meanwhile, my coffee shop dream, the one she'd mocked for years, was finally happening. Leon helped me with the legal side, because apparently opening a cafe involves more paperwork than marriage. I called it Grounds for Divorce. Yes, really. It started as a joke, but the name stuck. People loved the irony. The sign outside read, Serving closure daily, extra shot optional. I hired a few local baristas, added a corner bookshelf labeled Emotional Support Literature, and played nothing but chill jazz and breakup ballads. Within a month, business was booming. One morning, a woman ordered a latte and said, "Are you the Brooks Walker?" I nodded. She grinned. "You're my hero. I sent my ex a mug from your merch line." Yeah, there was merch now, mugs, shirts, even tote bags that said "Stay caffeinated, stay petty." Leon was right. America loves a man who loses it with purpose. And the best part? Bright Vista employees started showing up. Every time one walked in, I could tell by the look, a mix of curiosity, pity, and respect. They always tipped extra. One even whispered, "We still talk about the boardroom incident like it's folklore." Life was absurdly poetic. While Clara was scrubbing toilets, I was running a profitable business out of poetic revenge. One afternoon, I came home early to find her at the sink, sleeves rolled up, humming. Actually humming. "Wow," I said, leaning against the doorway. "Didn't think I'd live to see the day you find inner peace next to a bottle of bleach." She didn't look up. "Don't flatter yourself. I'm just doing what I said I would." I grinned. "You mean obeying the terms of your self-inflicted community service?" She rolled her eyes. "You're insufferable." "True," I said, "but at least I'm consistent." The truth was, and I'll never admit this out loud, part of me respected her resilience. She could have left, could have taken the legal nuke route, but instead she stayed and swallowed her pride. Maybe she thought she could earn redemption. Maybe she just didn't want to lose everything. Either way, she was learning humility the hard way, and watching it unfold was better than therapy. The kids began warming to her again. Sophie started letting her braid her hair in the mornings. Eli bragged to his friends that Mom's finally normal. Even Cooper, our dog, stopped growling when she entered the room. Progress. And me? I found myself less angry every day. Still sarcastic, sure, but not burning inside. One night, as we sat in the living room after dinner, her folding laundry, me reviewing cafe invoices, she broke the silence. "You really named your shop grounds for divorce?" "Yup." She chuckled. "That's actually clever." "I know," I said. "You should visit sometime. They've got a loyalty program. Every 10 coffees, you earn back 1 ounce of dignity." She laughed, genuinely. Not the fake, PR laugh she used in meetings. It was awkward but real, like a window finally cracking open after years of suffocating air. For a moment, the tension eased. I leaned back, watching her fold one of my shirts. The same woman who used to roll her eyes when I left one sock out of place. "You know," I said quietly, "you're not terrible at this." She smirked. "At folding your mess?" "At starting over," I said. She didn't reply, just kept folding, slower this time. I didn't push it. Sometimes silence says enough. As I got up to leave, she said softly, "I might take you up on that coffee shop visit." I turned, grinning. "You should. I'll even give you the employee discount, 0%. Revenge doesn't pay, but sarcasm's free." She rolled her eyes, but there was a faint smile there. A truce, maybe, or at least the beginning of one. And for the first time since the day I opened that cursed email, I realized something. Maybe karma wasn't here to punish her anymore. Maybe it was here to remind me that life, when flipped upside down, can still brew something worth tasting. You know that eerie calm after a hurricane, when you walk outside expecting chaos but instead find everything weirdly shiny and peaceful. That's what life felt like a year later. The internet had moved on to new scandals, politicians, influencers, billionaires pretending to be humble. Laundry Guy was now a piece of meme history, buried beneath the sands of algorithmic forgetfulness. My cafe, Grounds for Divorce, was thriving. The neighborhood moms came for gossip, the college kids came for Wi-Fi, and the recently dumped came for emotional CPR. We even had a drink called the Espresso, bitterness guaranteed, extra strong, no refills. Clara and I had stabilized. Civil, polite. We'd split the assets officially, drawn clean boundaries, and somehow figured out how to co-parent without wanting to reenact the Trojan War. The kids were good, business was booming, and for the first time in years, peace didn't feel like a punchline. Until Jasper Lee, the human protein shake himself, walked into my cafe looking like a man who'd been surviving on regret and gas station granola bars. I was wiping down the counter when the doorbell jingled, and there he was, hoodie, sunken eyes, the aura of a motivational poster gone wrong. "Brooks," he said quietly. "Long time." I stared at him for a full 10 seconds, trying to decide if I was hallucinating or just too caffeinated? Jasper, I said finally. You're either brave or lost. He gave a weak smile. Both. Then, God help me. He pulled out a folded piece of paper. I'm looking for work. I nearly choked. Work? Here? At my cafe? He nodded. I saw online you were hiring. I've been blacklisted since, well, you know. Oh, I know, I said, wiping the counter again just so I didn't throw the rag at him. You mean since you decided to have an affair with your boss/my wife in front of several NDAs worth of witnesses? He winced. I deserve that. You deserve a lot more than that, I muttered. He shuffled awkwardly. Look, I just need a chance to start over. I leaned on the counter, pretending to think. Part of me wanted to kick him out so hard he'd bounce into next week. But another, darker part, the petty part, started to grin. Sure, I said finally. You can work here. His eyes lit up. Really? Yeah. You any good with espresso machines? He nodded enthusiastically. Absolutely. I can. Perfect, I interrupted. You'll be cleaning them. The look on his face was pure poetry. Cleaning? Yup, I said cheerfully. Every nozzle, every pipe, every drip tray. Think of it as professional redemption. He hesitated, then nodded. Okay, I'll do it. Attaboy, I said, tossing him an apron. Welcome to Grounds for Divorce, where karma clocks in at 9 sharp. Watching Jasper scrub the espresso machine that day was the single most satisfying visual experience of my adult life. He worked quietly, shoulders hunched, avoiding eye contact with everyone. Customers whispered. One guy nudged his friend and said, Isn't that the dude from that scandal? I shrugged. Everyone deserves a second chance, I said innocently, then added, Some just have to earn it one filter basket at a time. By noon, Jasper was sweating like he'd just fought a caffeine demon. Every time I walked past, I'd say something motivational like, make sure you get under the steam wand, champ, or don't worry, character builds faster than foam. He didn't argue. He just nodded and kept cleaning. Around 3, Clara showed up. She'd been stopping by sometimes, quietly, to grab coffee and make small talk that didn't end in explosions. The moment she stepped inside, she froze. Her eyes landed on Jasper, hunched over the counter, scrubbing like a man trying to erase history. Is that, she started. Yup, I said, stirring my coffee. Why on earth would you? Because I'm a firm believer in recycling, I said with a straight face. She stared at me, then started laughing. Honest, shocked laughter that turned heads. Jasper, poor guy, looked up, met her eyes, and nearly dropped the cleaning rag. Hi, Clara, he muttered. She shook her head, still laughing. Oh my God, this is insane. Welcome to my world, I said. Population, poetic justice. She walked up to the counter. You really hired him? Of course. He needed a job, and I needed someone who knows how to clean up messes they caused. Her laughter softened into something else, something like respect. You're unbelievable. Thank you, I said. I try. She ordered her usual, black coffee, no sugar, and sat by the window. For a brief, surreal moment, all three of us occupied the same space. The betrayed, the betrayer, and the formerly betraying wife. It should have been awkward. It should have been explosive. But it was just weirdly calm. When Jasper finished his shift, he handed me the apron. Thanks, he said quietly, for letting me work here. Don't thank me, I said. Thank Karma. She's the one doing all the hiring these days. He nodded, then left, shoulders hunched like a man who finally understood what rock bottom really meant. Clara watched him go, then turned to me. You're something else, Brooks. Yeah, I said, sipping my coffee. Clean. She smiled faintly. You know, if this were a movie, that would have been the scene where everyone cries and hugs. Yeah, I said, but this is real life. We just serve coffee and consequences. She laughed again, softer this time. And for the first time in forever, I realized something. Revenge had finally stopped tasting bitter. It was just balanced, like a good brew. It's funny how life moves on when you stop forcing it to make sense. A year and a half after the Great Laundry Apocalypse, my name had finally faded from the public gossip cycle. Laundry Guy became a meme-tier legend mentioned occasionally by bored podcasters and nostalgic Redditors. But mostly, I was just Brooks again. The guy who made a mean cappuccino and could fix an espresso grinder blindfolded. My cafe, Grounds for Divorce, was still thriving, still hilarious, and still serving fresh karma by the cup. I'd made peace with the fact that the internet will forever remember me as the man who turned heartbreak into a public service announcement. But unlike most people who go viral, I didn't crash afterward. I built something. And weirdly enough, I was proud. Clara and I had settled into a strange but functional rhythm. Civil, co-parenting like pros. There were no romantic sparks, no candlelit reconciliations, but there was peace. And, for us, that was revolutionary. The kids were older now, old enough to understand that marriage isn't always a fairy tale, but it doesn't have to turn into a horror story either. Sophie was applying for art school. Eli had joined his middle school robotics club, and both were thriving. Cooper the dog had become the cafe mascot. Customers loved him, and he loved free pastries, so everyone won. The morning Clara came by again. It was raining, soft, quiet rain that made the world smell clean and new. She walked in wearing a beige coat, no makeup, hair loose, holding 2 coffees instead of 1. I didn't need to look twice to know one was for me. You really made something out of all that chaos, she said, setting the cup in front of me. Her tone wasn't defensive anymore, just calm, maybe even a little proud. I smirked. Told you I'd make something of myself. You just didn't think it'd come with latte art. She smiled faintly, pulling up a chair. No, I didn't. But I'm glad you did. The silence between us wasn't heavy anymore. It was the kind of silence that happens when 2 people finally stop competing to be right and start accepting what actually happened. So, I said, taking a sip of the coffee. How's life after Bright Vista? She laughed softly, shaking her head. Let's just say corporate exile humbles you. I started consulting. Small businesses, startups. Nothing fancy, but it's honest. Consulting, huh? I said, nodding. Helping people avoid self-destruction. You're kind of an expert. She rolled her eyes, smiling. You're never going to let that go, are you? Nope, I said. Some memories deserve to be laminated. She took a sip of her coffee and leaned back. You seem lighter, Brooks. Happier. I am, I said honestly. You know what I realized? Revenge doesn't heal you, but it clears the junk off the table so you can finally see what you've been ignoring. Turns out, I didn't need to fix you. I just needed to stop apologizing for being me. She nodded slowly, looking around the cafe, the plants, the shelves, the wall art made of reclaimed laundry clips. Yeah, I leaned into the theme. You built something beautiful, she said quietly. I shrugged. I built something honest. Beautiful came later. We sat there for a while, listening to the rain against the windows. For once, there wasn't any anger, just mutual understanding. I could tell she was trying to say something deeper, maybe even an apology dressed up as conversation, but I didn't need it anymore. I'd already forgiven her, not because she deserved it, but because I didn't want to carry it. You ever regret it? She asked suddenly. All of it. I thought about it. The heartbreak, the chaos, the viral fame, the humiliation, the weird sense of freedom that came after. No, I said finally. Not anymore. If it hadn't happened, I'd still be living on autopilot, pretending everything's fine. Sometimes things have to explode before you can breathe again. She nodded, eyes glassy but steady. You always had a way with words. Yeah, I said, smirking. Turns out people just needed me to say them over coffee. She laughed, genuinely this time. The sound was familiar, nostalgic, but not painful anymore. Just part of the past. A group of customers came in then, regulars. A couple of them waved, and one pointed to Cooper, who was asleep near the counter. Hey, laundry guy, someone called jokingly. You ever gonna make merch for dog owners? I rolled my eyes. Only if it says, fetch your own closure, I said, and the room burst into laughter. Clara laughed too. Not bitterly, not awkwardly, just naturally, like she'd finally stopped fighting the joke. After the rush settled, I found her by the window again, watching the rain. She was smiling at the sight of the customers, the chatter, the life of the cafe. You turned pain into comedy, she said softly. Into art. Into caffeine, I corrected. Comedy's just a side effect. Her expression softened. You really did heal, didn't you? Mostly, I said. Still have days where I think about it all, but they don't hurt anymore. It's like an old scar. You remember how you got it, but it doesn't sting when you touch it. She was quiet for a while, then said, You know, I'm proud of you, Brooks. I smiled. That means more than you think. And it did. Not because I needed her approval, but because it finally came from a place that wasn't manipulation or guilt. It was just truth, unfiltered, unpolished, human. When she stood to leave, she hesitated. Do you think we'll ever be friends? I considered it. Maybe, I said. One day. But for now, we're something better. We're done being enemies. She nodded, tears forming but not falling. Goodbye, Brooks. Goodbye, Clara. She left, and for the first time, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like both of us had finally stepped out of the wreckage and started walking in different directions toward peace. The rest of the day went on like any other. Orders, laughter, the sound of the espresso machine steaming away. But everything felt cleaner, calmer, like the universe had finally stopped screaming and decided to hum instead. That night, after closing, I sat outside the cafe with Cooper. The rain had stopped, and the streets glistened under the glow of the streetlights. I pulled out 2 mugs, one for me, one symbolic, and poured us both a drink. We did it, buddy, I said, scratching his ears. We aired it out, cleaned it up, and somehow came out better. He wagged his tail like he understood every word. I raised my cup toward the dark, quiet sky. To clean endings, I said, and messes worth surviving. If there's one thing I learned through all of it, the betrayal, the chaos, the viral fame, it's that revenge isn't about ruining someone else. It's about rebuilding yourself so well that their damage doesn't define you anymore. You take their betrayal, polish it into clarity, and wear it like armor. And if you can make the world laugh while doing it, even better. As the night settled around me, I finished my coffee, smiled at the empty street, and whispered to no one in particular, here's to the next chapter, clean, caffeinated, and finally at peace. My wife showed up after 6 days missing. She smirked. Be grateful I even came home. I enjoyed my stay with my lover, I said. Thanks, but you don't live here anymore, and handed her a yellow envelope. Her face went white as she opened it. There are entrances, and then there are Mara entrances. The kind that could make a Greek tragedy jealous. 6 days, 6 whole days, of radio silence. And when she finally waltzed back through that front door, she didn't look like someone crawling home after a breakdown. Nope. She looked refreshed. Like she'd just checked out of a spa package called Infidelity Deluxe. Comes with complimentary nerve. Lipstick flawless, hair like a shampoo commercial, and that perfume. The kind that makes you sneeze and question your self-worth at the same time. She strutted in like she owned the place, which technically she used to, but by then, she was more of a squatter in emotional foreclosure. I was sitting on the couch, halfway through a cup of coffee that had lost its will to live hours ago. My phone lit up with a message from Derek, my lawyer/chaos coach. Stay calm. Let her talk first. They always incriminate themselves. And boy, did she ever. Without even a flicker of shame, she dropped her luggage, fluffed her hair, and said, like it was the most normal sentence in the English language, be grateful I even came home. I enjoyed my stay with my lover. I almost applauded. Honestly, she could have won most audacious quote of the year and given her acceptance speech in that living room. There was a split second where my brain lagged, like it was buffering disbelief. My ears heard the words, but my sanity was still trying to reboot. She said it like she'd just come back from a yoga retreat, not from a 6-day romantic jailbreak. My jaw didn't drop, it just recalculated my entire life. The smart part of my brain said, Logan, don't react. Stay cool. Let the paperwork do the heavy lifting. The dumb part wanted to ask, did your lover at least have better Wi-Fi? Instead, I just said, thanks, but you don't live here anymore. Calm. Steady. Like I'd rehearsed that line in my head 1,000 times. Which, spoiler, I had. That's when I picked up the yellow envelope from the table. It had been sitting there for 3 days straight, glaring at me like a silent co-conspirator. We'd had conversations, that envelope and I, long ones. Me, the betrayed husband. It, the instrument of poetic justice. Together, we'd plotted this exact moment. She squinted at it like I'd handed her a bill she didn't remember creating. What's this? She asked, her voice dripping with fake confidence. The kind that melts faster than discount ice cream. Your early retirement package, I said, leaning back like I was the HR manager of Karma and Company. Go ahead. Open it. She ripped it open with that same impatience she used to have for gift wrapping, because Mara was never one for mystery unless it involved cheating. The sound of paper tearing hit my ears like applause. I swear, I almost heard violins. She started reading, eyes darting across the pages, and that's when the transformation began. You ever watch a color drain from someone's face so fast you think they've seen a ghost? Or worse, their own reflection in the consequences? That was Mara. 1 second, she was Beyoncé in heels. The next, Casper in Gucci. Her breathing hitched. "What is this?" she whispered. But her voice cracked halfway through like her vocal cords were trying to file for divorce too. I didn't answer right away. I let the silence stretch, because silence, when wielded correctly, can be louder than a bomb. "Finally," I said, "it's what happens when Operation Calm Revenge reaches its grand finale." She blinked, completely missing the reference, because of course she did. This was a woman who once called me dramatic for labeling Tupperware. She flipped through the documents again, and I could see the realization slapping her across the face. Evidence, signatures, and legal citations that all translated to "You just played yourself. You can't do this," she stammered. "Actually, I can," I said, sipping my coffee like I was narrating a crime show. "And I did. 2 days ago. That's the beauty of premeditated paperwork. Now, you have to understand something about Mara. She thrived on control. She could manipulate an argument like a lawyer on espresso. But this time, the floor had vanished beneath her heels. "You're overreacting," she said finally, her voice finding a shaky bit of defiance. "It was just a break." "Oh, a break," I said, mock gasp included. "Like the kind where you vanish for 6 days, sleep with your boss, and text your sister beach selfies caption "New Beginnings"?" Her face froze. "Gotcha." I stood, took a few steps closer, and lowered my voice to that calm, dangerous register I learned from watching every divorce courtroom show ever. "You see, Mara, this isn't revenge. This is adjustment. You made your choice, and I just filed the paperwork that made it permanent." She dropped the papers onto the table, her eyes flicking from me to the door and back again, like she was calculating an escape route. "But here's the thing about guilt. It's a terrible GPS. It gets you lost fast. You think you're punishing me," she said, mustering what she thought was confidence. "But you're just proving I was right about you all along. You're cold." That one made me laugh. Not a polite chuckle. No, a full, slightly unhinged laugh that scared the dog. "Cold. Mara, you cheated, confessed like it was a TED Talk, and walked into this house smelling like cologne that doesn't even retail here. You don't get to diagnose me." She folded her arms, staring me down like she had one last poker chip to play. "You won't actually go through with it," she said. "You love me." I smiled. Not a big one. Just enough to let her see the quiet ending in my eyes. "I did," I said softly. "Then you took a 6-day seminar on how to kill that." The tension sat between us like humidity, thick, suffocating, impossible to ignore. For years, she'd used silence as her power move. If an argument didn't go her way, she'd shut down, make me chase her for closure. Not tonight. Tonight, I let the silence be mine. I watched her fidget, twist her ring, avoid my eyes. That's when it hit her, truly hit her, that this wasn't a fight she could cry her way out of or win through charm. The kingdom had fallen, and she'd crowned herself queen of the ashes. I didn't raise my voice once, didn't curse, didn't throw anything. Though I can't lie, imagining that yellow envelope in slow motion against the wall was tempting. Instead, I just stepped aside and gestured toward the hallway. "Bedroom's that way," I said. "You've got an hour to grab what's yours before the locks change again." Her mouth fell open. "You changed the locks?" "Twice," I said. "Once when you left, and again when I realized peace was cheaper than therapy." She stood there, trembling, not from fear, but from the crumbling illusion that she still had control. I watched her pick up her bag, her shoes clicking against the hardwood like punctuation marks to the end of an era. As she walked past me, she paused at the door. "You'll regret this," she whispered. I tilted my head. "Maybe, but I'll do it well rested." And with that, she was gone, slamming the door with the kind of drama that used to make my blood boil. But not tonight. Tonight, that slam sounded like music. Like the closing credits to a movie I should have walked out of halfway through. I sank back into the couch, pulled out my phone, and texted Derek one word: "Delivered." He replied with a clapping emoji and, "Told you paperwork hits harder than yelling." The house was quiet, peaceful. For the first time in years, my thoughts weren't competing with chaos. I glanced at the empty space where her perfume used to linger and smiled. The queen of chaos had returned, but this time, she'd walked herself out. You know how every disaster movie starts with a happy montage? That was us once, me and Mara, the couple people used to point at and say, goals. 8 years together, 5 married, and we actually believed love could survive on inside jokes, caffeine, and blind optimism. I used to wake up thinking I'd won the lottery of companionship. Now I realize I just got the trial version with no refund policy. Back then, our apartment felt alive. Music in the kitchen, her humming something off-key while pretending to cook, me pretending not to notice the smoke detector becoming our unofficial dinner bell. We were broke, but stupidly happy. Saturday mornings meant pancakes shaped like hearts. Badly shaped, I'll admit, because apparently art wasn't my love language. And Sunday nights meant Netflix marathons where we'd argue over snacks like it was a Supreme Court case. You finished the Pringles, she'd accuse. You were emotionally distant, I'd counter. It was comedy disguised as domestic harmony. And for a while, I really thought we were unbreakable. We had our signature things, our couple quirks. She'd steal my hoodies like it was a competitive sport. I'd hide her hair ties just to see her unravel, and then I'd magically find them like a hero in sweatpants. It was dumb. It was cute. It was everything relationships are supposed to be before life introduces taxes, burnout, and Instagram filters that make you believe you're underachieving. Back then, we were a team. The Pearson-Jensen duo that our friends Riley and Jess used to brag about. You guys are so in sync, they'd say, usually after we finished each other's sentences or tag-teamed an argument against them at trivia night. I used to grin at that. If I'd known how wrong they were, I'd have started charging them for false hope instead. Our love story had humble origins. One of those meet cuties that sound adorable in hindsight until you realize it's foreshadowing chaos. We met at a friend's barbecue. She spilled her drink on my shoes, laughed instead of apologizing, and told me I looked like the kind of guy who keeps emergency snacks in his car. I did, by the way, and somehow that made her more interested. I offered her one. Granola bar, classy move. And by the end of the night, we were arguing about which Marvel movie was the best like we'd known each other for years. Fast forward a few months, and we were inseparable. I thought she was fearless. She said I made her laugh more than anyone else. I should have known that was a red flag. Women don't usually fall for the funny guy unless they're planning to later call him immature. We were unstoppable for a while. The broke years built character and debt, but they also built us. She'd come home exhausted from her marketing job, flop onto the couch, and say, "If I die tomorrow, promise me you'll cremate my inbox." I'd laugh, rub her feet, and we'd talk about dreams, moving to a bigger place, maybe starting a business together, having a kid someday when our plants stopped dying. Those were the nights when love felt like a quiet agreement that the world could wait. Somewhere along the way, success snuck in. She got promoted. I switched jobs and started pulling real numbers. The apartment got bigger, the dinners fancier, and the silence longer. It's funny how comfort can turn into distance without anyone meaning for it to. We used to talk about everything. Then we started texting instead of talking, emailing instead of laughing, scheduling affection like it was part of our work calendar. I'd say, "Want to go for a drive?" And she'd say, "Maybe after this project." The projects never ended. Still, there were good days that kept me hooked. Our road trips were legendary. I'd drive, she'd navigate, which basically meant she'd fall asleep 10 minutes in while holding the map upside down. Once, we got lost for 3 hours somewhere in Colorado because she swore she knew a shortcut. I didn't mind. I got to watch the sunset while she drooled slightly on her seatbelt. That's what love looked like back then. Small moments of stupid joy mixed with cheap gas station coffee and playlists that made no sense. There was a night. I remember it like it was carved into the timeline of my downfall. We sat on our balcony with takeout pizza, talking about the future. She said, "Promise me we'll never end up like those couples who stopped trying." I laughed, kissed her hand, and said, "Promise." And like the fool I was, I meant it. We were dreamers, her and I. We built castles in conversation and thought our laughter could keep the walls standing. Turns out, castles built on trust collapse quietly. Our friends, Riley and Jess, were the unofficial witnesses of our so-called fairy tale. Riley, my best friend since college, used to joke that Mara and I were his proof that love still worked. Jess, his wife, adored Mara. "She's got this aura," Jess would say, "like she's destined for something great." Yeah, well, she was just not with me. Back then, We'd double date at dive bars, exchange couple advice like idiots, and talk about building dream houses next to each other. I should have paid more attention to how Mara's aura started getting brighter when other men complimented her. I'm not gonna lie, I wasn't perfect. I worked too much. Sometimes I forgot anniversaries. I got lazy about romance, thinking comfort was the same as love. I didn't notice when her laughter started to sound rehearsed or when her texts lost the emojis. There were warning signs, sure, but when you love someone, you rewrite reality to protect your fantasy. I told myself she was just stressed, that we were both tired, that love had seasons, and ours was just winter. But deep down, I knew the temperature wasn't changing. Looking back, I can pinpoint the moment the team broke. It wasn't loud. There was no argument, no betrayal yet, just a quiet shift. She started sleeping facing away from me. Her good mornings became whispers, and her hugs became quick pats on the back, like I was a co-worker she barely liked. One night, I reached for her hand while watching TV, and she didn't pull away, but she didn't hold back either. That's when I realized love doesn't die with screaming. It dies with indifference. But damn, I still held on. I became the emotional janitor of our marriage, cleaning up the silence, patching the cracks, pretending the leaks were part of the charm. I'd crack jokes, hoping to hear her laugh again, but her laughs had deadlines now. She'd scroll through her phone mid-conversation, and I'd sit there, watching the ghost of the woman I fell in love with. And even then, I told myself it was just a phase. Because that's what love does. It makes you delusional with hope. If you'd told me then that the woman I shared my life with would vanish for 6 days without a text, I'd have called you dramatic. Mara wasn't cruel, I'd have said. She was just distant. Turns out distance was just practice. But I can't lie. Thinking back, those early years still mess with me. The laughter, the late-night road trips, the burnt pancakes, they're too vivid to forget. It's like my heart keeps replaying the trailer of a movie that ended badly, hoping maybe this time the ending changes. But it never does. Every time I think of her smile back then, I have to remind myself, it wasn't a lie. It was just temporary truth. People ask me sometimes if I miss her. I tell them I miss who I thought she was. Because the real Mara, the one who packed her morals next to her mascara and called betrayal a vacation, that woman didn't exist back then. She evolved. And I, genius that I am, helped her grow wings to fly straight into someone else's arms. Back when love was a team sport, I thought we were playing for the same trophy. Turns out, she'd already switched teams mid-season and forgot to tell me. And that's the thing about nostalgia. It's a scam. It makes you remember the warmth and forget the fire. They say the devil hides in the details, but in my case, he wore floral notes and cost $180 a bottle. It started small, almost innocent. One day Mara came home smelling like a high-end boutique I couldn't afford. You know that rich people scent, the one that makes you think, this person has better Wi-Fi and secrets. Yeah, that one. The funny thing? There was no new perfume bottle on her dresser, no receipt, no look what I bought brag, which was suspicious because Mara loved narrating every purchase like she was hosting Shopaholics Anonymous, the live edition. I didn't say anything at first. I figured maybe it was from work, or maybe the woman next to her at Starbucks sneezed luxury all over her. But then it happened again, and that smell lingered like regret. It followed her into the house, the car, the bed. I started to recognize it before I even saw her face. That's when the overthinker in me started clocking in over time. Then came the password change. We'd always known each other's passcodes. It was part of our we have nothing to hide phase, back when trust was our love language instead of suspicion. But one day, her phone asked for Face ID like it was guarding national secrets. Security update, she said with a shrug. Security, my ass. The only thing she was protecting was her extracurricular activities. I still remember that night. She was sitting on the couch, laughing at something on her phone, smiling like the screen had just told her she'd won the emotional lottery. I was beside her, pretending to watch TV, but really watching her, like I was studying for an exam in heartbreak prevention. She caught me staring and asked, "What?" I said, "Nothing." Because apparently, that's the official husband response when you're 3 red flags deep, but still in denial. The business dinners started next. I should have known the word business was code for bullshit. Before, she'd roll her eyes at corporate events, saying things like, "I'd rather watch paint dry than talk synergy with accountants." Now suddenly, She was RSVPing faster than a kid getting free ice cream. Her work wardrobe evolved too. Less practical, more strategic cleavage. I'd compliment her out of habit, like, "You look great," and she'd toss back a casual, "It's just for networking." Right. Networking. Apparently, she was networking with someone who thought dress codes included candlelight. I tried to be understanding. People change, right? Careers evolve. Since evolve, boundaries dissolve. I told myself not to overreact. She's just stressed, I said. Maybe she's rediscovering herself. People in love are world-class liars, especially when they're lying to themselves. Still, I started noticing patterns. The late returns, the sudden obsession with her appearance, the way she'd check her phone during dinner like it was sending her oxygen. And the biggest clue of all, the silence. Mara used to narrate her day down to the brand of coffee the intern spilled. Now, she'd come home with stories shorter than her temper. "How was work?" I'd ask. "Fine. What did you eat?" "Nothing much." Translation: please stop asking before I start lying again. The night everything clicked, it was raining, the kind of rain that makes you feel like the universe is adding sound effects to your realization scene. She was in the shower, humming some R&B song I'd never heard her play before. Her phone buzzed on the counter, lighting up the bathroom with that familiar blue glow. I swear I wasn't snooping, I just glanced. Reflex. You ever see something that rearranges your DNA in real time? That was me when I read those messages. Short, casual, deadly. "Last night was worth it." Followed by, "He still doesn't know," winking-faced. My hands went cold. My heart went full microwave popcorn. Rapid, chaotic, burning at the edges. I wanted to laugh, cry, and call a priest all at once. I scrolled once more. Screenshots are a reflex when your soul needs evidence for court later. My brain screamed, "This can't be real." But my gut whispered, "You already knew." She came out of the shower a few minutes later, towel wrapped around her hair, steam following her like special effects. "You okay?" she asked, catching me staring at nothing. I smiled, the kind of smile you give a cop when they pull you over and ask, "Do you know why I stopped you?" "Yeah," I said, just thinking. And boy, was I. Thinking about how my entire marriage had just turned into a bad reality show, and I was the only one without a script. She kissed my cheek, casual, practiced, and walked away humming that same damn song, probably the soundtrack to her infidelity. I sat there for hours after she went to bed, staring at the wall like it was going to provide therapy. My mind played reruns. Every missed call, every late-night meeting, every new outfit that didn't fit her budget or our life. The signs weren't subtle. I just refused to read them. I was the idiot in the horror movie saying, "It's probably just the wind," right before getting emotionally murdered. I could have confronted her that night. Could have yelled, cried, demanded explanations. But something in me froze. I didn't want excuses, I wanted confirmation. And trust me, when you reach that stage, you've already lost half your heart and all your peace. The next morning, I tested her, small stuff, just to see her reactions. "You smell nice," I said. "New perfume." She smiled, almost too fast. "Oh yeah? Sample from work." I nodded, pretending I believed her, but my sarcasm was already plotting its revenge tour. Later that day, she texted, "Working late." So I texted back, "Cool. I'll save you dinner." Translation: "Cool. I'll save this text for Exhibit A." That night, I waited up. Midnight rolled around, then 1, then 2. Finally, headlights flashed through the window, and I heard the door unlock. She came in quietly, thinking I was asleep. That same damn perfume hit before I even saw her. I lay there in the dark, heart pounding, pretending to sleep like a man auditioning for an Oscar in denial. She slipped into bed, phone face down, whispering a soft, "Hey," that sounded rehearsed. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just listened, to the sound of my marriage breathing its last breath. The next day, I told my best friend Riley over lunch. He almost choked on his fries. "Bro, you sure? Maybe it's innocent." I laughed so hard the waiter looked concerned. "Riley, no woman comes home smelling like Dior scandal after a staff meeting." He nodded slowly, wiped his mouth, and said, "So what now?" I shrugged. "Now? I gather evidence." Calmly, he repeated, like I'd just said I was planning to hug a bear. "Yeah," I said, "because anger burns fast. Revenge, though? That's slow-cooked." That night, I watched her from across the dinner table. She was scrolling her phone, smiling to herself, probably reading his messages. I almost wanted to thank the guy, not for stealing my wife, but for giving me clarity. I'd been begging the universe for a sign, and it sent me screenshots. I didn't explode, didn't accuse. I just watched, observed. Every lie was now a piece of data. Every smile, a clue. You can't fix a cheating spouse, but you can document them like a wildlife researcher. People think betrayal feels like fire, but it doesn't. It feels like cold air, numb, empty, quiet. I didn't cry that night. Didn't scream. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling, realizing I'd built a home with someone who'd rented her loyalty out by the hour. By the next morning, I had a plan forming. I wasn't going to play the shouting husband trope. Oh no, I was going to be the calm before her personal storm. If she wanted to play chess, fine. I'd be the checkmate she never saw coming. But for now, I smiled, kissed her goodbye, and watched her leave for another meeting. And as that perfume cloud lingered in the air, I finally admitted it to myself. Mara Jensen wasn't the woman I married anymore. She was an imposter with perfect eyeliner and terrible secrets. And that's when it hit me. She'd traded the scent of love for the smell of someone else's cologne. And once you notice that difference, you can't ever unsmell it. There's something deeply satisfying about planning revenge while eating scrambled eggs. That's how Operation Calm Revenge was born. On a random Tuesday morning, me standing in the kitchen flipping eggs while Mara was in the shower texting her boss. She thought she was living in a romantic thriller. I was writing the sequel, The Husband Who Knew Too Much. Now, don't get me wrong, I wasn't going full crime documentary mode. I wasn't about to lose my pension over someone who didn't know how to clear her message history. No, my weapon of choice was paperwork, the legal kind. Because yelling is temporary, but signatures? They're forever. Step 1 was simple, move my salary. See, Mara handled the bills. Correction, she used to handle the bills. But when your wife's loyalty starts outsourcing itself, you don't keep your direct deposits in the same joint account she uses to buy lingerie on sale. So, I redirected my paycheck into a private account under Pierce Consulting. The consulting part was purely fictional, but it made me sound mysterious, and mystery was my new favorite personality trait. Step 2, collect evidence. Not in a creepy stalker way, more in a you're gonna regret underestimating me way. Screenshots, bank receipts, GPS logs, the holy trinity of marital betrayal. It turns out Mara was about as discreet as a marching band in a library. Same hotel, same charges, same night every week. Business dinner, she said. Yeah, unless business now means room service and betrayal points. I even got footage from the smart doorbell I'd installed months ago. It was supposed to make us feel safe. Instead, it caught her leaving the house in networking attire and coming home looking like she'd been networking horizontally. Step 3, the lawyer. Enter Derek, college buddy, divorce specialist, and the kind of man who treats legal vengeance like performance art. I called him and said, "Derek, it's time." He paused, then replied, "Oh, finally." I was getting bored. We met at his office, big leather chair, whiskey decanter, and enough smug confidence to power a small city. He poured me a drink before I even asked. "So," he said, leaning back, "do we want quick pain or poetic justice?" "Poetic," I said without hesitation. "Always poetic." He grinned. "Good choice. Those last longer." Derek's philosophy was simple. Don't just end the marriage, bury it in legal paperwork. He pulled out forms faster than I could process them. "You've got her messages, transactions, timeline?" he asked. I handed over a neatly labeled folder. He flipped through it, impressed. "Damn, Pierce. You're more organized than my interns. You want full control of the assets." "Every dime," I said. "But make it classy." Derek smirked. "Classy revenge. I like that." He explained my options. Freeze accounts, separate property under suspected misconduct. File quietly, so she doesn't get tipped off. It was like setting a legal booby trap. Every clause a tripwire waiting for her ego to step on it. "And whatever you do," he said, pointing at me with his pen, "don't confront her yet. Let her think she's winning. The fall's funnier when they don't see the cliff." That line stuck with me. I drove home that day with an odd calmness in my chest, like the storm had passed and left me with clarity instead of chaos. So, I did the unthinkable. I acted normal. I cooked dinner. I smiled. I kissed her cheek before work. You should have seen her confusion. It was glorious. Cheaters hate when you don't feed the drama. She kept waiting for the explosion, but I was too busy updating my spreadsheet labeled evidence of dumb decisions. Every time she left for her meetings, I'd check her GPS. Every time she lied, I'd note the time and date like an overqualified detective with a sense of humor. Riley, my best friend, caught wind of my new strategy and called it sociopathic grace. "You're scaring me, man," he said over a beer. "You're too calm." "That's the point," I told him. "You can't play chess if you're throwing the board." There was a certain comedy to it all. One evening, she walked in late, hair slightly messy, perfume assaulting the air like a guilty announcement. I asked, "Rough meeting?" She blinked, nodded. "Yeah, long day." "You should shower," I said with a smirk. "You smell like corporate exhaustion." She didn't catch the sarcasm, which made it even funnier. Inside, I was laughing like a man who'd already seen the movie and knew how it ended. The thing about calm revenge is that it's addictive. Every polite smile, every fake nod, it's all part of the setup. You're not reacting anymore. You're orchestrating. It's art. The turning point came when she left her laptop open one night. Rookie mistake. While she showered, I glanced at her screen. Her email was up, and there it was, a reservation confirmation. Same hotel, same name, same credit card. She'd even attached a note to herself. "Bring overnight bag. He likes the blue dress." I took a screenshot so fast you'd think I was training for the FBI. When she came out of the bathroom, she caught me on my phone, smiling. "What's funny?" she asked. "Oh, just something I read," I said. Yeah, her obituary and my patience. A week later, Derek sent me a draft of the divorce paperwork. "All done," he said over the phone. "She won't see this coming." The plan was elegant. Once she vanished again for one of her escapades, I'd have everything signed, sealed, and ready. He'd file immediately, freezing our joint assets and transferring her half of the house under my name through a legal loophole I didn't know existed. "This isn't revenge," Derek said. "This is justice wearing a suit." I couldn't have said it better myself. Meanwhile, I perfected my poker face. We even had dinner with friends one night, and she played the doting wife role like she was auditioning for an Oscar. Holding my hand, laughing too loud, kissing my cheek. Riley leaned over later and whispered, "She's laying it on thick." "Yep," I whispered back, "and she doesn't even know I'm filming the season finale next week." By this point, pretending was easy. I wasn't angry anymore. I was entertained. Every lie was another scene in my private sitcom. When she'd say, "I love you," I'd respond, "I bet you do." When she'd text, "Good night, Red Heart," I'd think, "Good night to him too, I guess." The irony kept me sane. It's strange how betrayal can make you philosophical. I used to think love was about forgiveness. Turns out, it's about financial planning and timing. The day before her business trip, I made breakfast. Pancakes, bacon, orange juice, the full husband of the year spread. She looked suspiciously pleased. "You're in a good mood," she said. "Just grateful." I replied, which was technically true. I was grateful the end was near. When she kissed me goodbye that morning, I wanted to laugh. She had no idea she was kissing the man who'd already filed her freedom in triplicate. That night, I sat at the table alone, sipping whiskey, watching the rain outside. I didn't feel sad. I felt relieved. For the first time in months, I wasn't reacting to her chaos. I was directing it. I'd gone from heartbroken to Harvard-level strategist in under a month. The best part? She'd never see it coming. Because revenge, when done right, doesn't scream. It signs quietly at the bottom of a legal document. And as I clinked my glass against the empty air, I whispered the motto that had kept me sane through every fake smile and sleepless night. Stay calm, stay smart. Let karma do the screaming. There's a special kind of peace that hits you when your cheating spouse goes missing, like the universe hit the mute button on chaos. The first 24 hours felt like a free trial of serenity I didn't know existed. No nagging. No fake goodnights. No, don't forget to take out the trash, Logan. Just silence. Beautiful, suspicious silence. On day one, I actually thought something might have happened to her. Like, real happened. Maybe her car broke down. Maybe aliens abducted her and decided to return her after realizing she's high maintenance. I even called her sister, Ivy. Ivy was useless as usual, all faux concern and zero information. She didn't tell me anything, Ivy said, sounding way too calm. She's probably with friends. Yeah, Friends with benefits, probably. By day 2, I stopped pretending to be worried. You can't fake panic when your gut's already signed the divorce papers. I woke up, made myself pancakes, played some old school R&B, and realized how nice it felt not to hear her voice cutting through the house like passive-aggressive elevator music. I could breathe again. It's funny, when she was around, the air felt taxed. Now it was free. I sat at the kitchen table, sipping coffee, staring at her empty chair, and thought, this is what peace smells like. Spoiler, it smells like maple syrup and detachment. Of course, I played my part publicly. I called her workplace. Hey, it's Logan. Just checking if Mara came in today. The HR lady hesitated. No, she said she'd be taking a few personal days. Personal, huh? More like personnel, singular. Her new boss, specifically. That's when I knew. The dots weren't even dots anymore. They'd connected themselves into a full-blown betrayal mural. My wife hadn't been kidnapped. She was on vacation, with the same guy whose emails she color-coded on her laptop. So I made a choice. No confrontation, no emotional breakdown, no cliches. I went logistical. Changed the locks, froze the cards, rerouted the bills, and opened a bottle of whiskey older than our marriage. People think revenge is fire and fury, but it's really spreadsheets and signatures. And man, I was efficient. By noon, she couldn't access a single account without calling customer service. By 2 p.m., her gym membership was canceled. I even called her favorite salon and left a polite note. Mrs. Pierce will not be returning. Please remove her from your VIP list. Petty? Sure. Therapeutic? Absolutely. Day 3, I got nosy. I checked her sister's social media. Nothing from Mara. Of course, the woman who used to post her avocado toast suddenly went digital ghost. But Ivy? She'd posted a photo dump from Greece. Beautiful beaches, cocktails, and, surprise, surprise, a blurred figure in the background who looked a hell of a lot like Mara. The caption read, Girls Trip 2024, 2 hearts. Cute. Only problem? The girls included a guy with his arm conveniently cropped out of every photo like a game of hide the affair. I zoomed in. Yep, Mr. Bossman himself, wearing his signature Rolex and smirk. I laughed so hard I choked on my drink. My wife had gone off the grid, but the grid had Wi-Fi and cocktails. On day 4, my phone started blowing up. Not from her. No, she had the nerve to ghost me properly, but from people asking, hey, is Mara okay? Translation, we saw her Instagram story before she deleted it. Apparently, she'd posted a boomerang of 2 champagne glasses clinking over a caption that said, freedom tastes sweet. Freedom. Imagine being so committed to delusion that you rebrand infidelity as liberation. I didn't reply to anyone. Instead, I printed that screenshot and added it to my evidence folder. At this point, my case file looked like the world's most depressing scrapbook. Day 5 was bliss. I woke up late, stretched like a man reborn, and made breakfast shirtless with the windows open. It felt like a music video for healing. The neighbors probably thought I'd lost it, singing along to Otis Redding with a spatula as a microphone. I didn't care. I vacuumed the house, changed the sheets, and even threw out her half-used skincare products. Call it spring cleaning, but emotional edition. Then I found her favorite mug, the one that said wifey. I stared at it for a solid minute, then dropped it in the trash. Watching it crack felt better than therapy. But by nightfall, the calm started to fade, replaced by a quiet ache I didn't want to admit was loneliness. Not for her. Exactly. More for the idea of her. You spend years building a life with someone, and even when they burn it down, you still stare at the ashes wondering if maybe, just maybe, you could have saved it. I poured another drink and reminded myself, you can't fix something that doesn't want to stay. Still, I'll admit it, around midnight, I scrolled through old photos. There we were at the Grand Canyon, smiling like idiots, arms wrapped around each other. The caption, Team Pierce takes on the world. Yeah, well, Team Pierce disbanded due to moral bankruptcy. Then came day 6, the grand finale. I was halfway through a rerun of Better Call Saul. Ironic, given my lawyer Derek was basically my personal Saul Goodman, when my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I stared at it, already knowing. Curiosity won. I opened the message. One line. Coming home tonight face-blowing Akista. No apology, no explanation, not even punctuation anxiety. Just that smug little kiss emoji. I swear my eye twitched. The audacity of this woman could power a city. I set the phone down slowly, like it might explode, and laughed. Deep, unfiltered laughter that scared the cat. Because at that moment, I realized something. Mara genuinely thought she still had a home to come back to. I texted Derek a screenshot and said, "Showtime." He responded instantly, "Prepare the envelope." The yellow envelope, my Excalibur. I'd already filled it with everything. The signed divorce papers, financial transfers, hotel receipts, screenshots, and a little sticky note that said, "Enjoy your freedom. It's all yours now, literally." I placed it neatly on the coffee table and sat back, waiting. There was something poetic about it. The same table where we'd once shared anniversary dinners was now ground zero for poetic justice. Around 9 p.m., headlights flashed through the window. My heart didn't race this time. It just smirked. I watched her silhouette through the curtains, dragging a suitcase that looked like it had been wheeled across a guilty conscience. When she walked in, she didn't even hesitate. No shame, no caution, just pure entitlement. She looked radiant, though. I'll give her that. Sun-kissed skin, hair perfect, outfit screaming vacation glow. She smelled like luxury, lies, and SPF 50. I almost applauded. "Be grateful I even came home," she said, setting her bag down. I enjoyed my stay with my lover. I nearly spit my drink. "You've got to respect that kind of nerve." I said nothing at first, just watched her like a scientist studying a new species of delusion. She looked around, clearly expecting a fight. When I didn't bite, she frowned. "You're awfully quiet." "Oh, I'm just soaking in the performance," I said. "You've really outdone yourself this time." Bold move, opening with a confession. Her eyes narrowed. "Don't start, Logan." "Start." I laughed. "Sweetheart, this is the ending." I gestured toward the table. "That's for you." She eyed the yellow envelope like it was radioactive. "What is it?" "A souvenir," I said. She rolled her eyes, tore it open, and the second those papers hit her hands, her whole face changed. Watching it was better than any movie. Her tan faded in real time. The smirk disappeared. She flipped through the pages, reading the evidence, the signatures, the clauses Derek had written in bold legal poetry. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. You can't do this," she finally whispered. I smiled. "You'd be amazed what you can do with good Wi-Fi and motivation." She threw the papers on the table. "This is insane." "No," I said calmly. "Insane was you thinking you could cheat, vanish for 6 days, and waltz back in like it's Taco Tuesday." She blinked, realizing too late that the game had flipped. "We can talk about this," she said, suddenly soft, suddenly desperate. "Talk." I laughed. "We had years to talk. You chose text messages and room service." Her eyes darted around the room, maybe searching for something familiar, maybe realizing everything had changed. The photos on the wall, gone. Her belongings, packed and stored. Even her favorite throw blanket, donated to Goodwill. "You changed everything," she said, voice trembling. "No," I replied. "You did. I just did the paperwork." She sank onto the couch, holding her head in her hands, muttering something about mistakes and forgiveness. I let her talk. Every word was an echo bouncing off a wall I'd already torn down. Finally, she looked up and said, "What do you want from me?" "Nothing," I said simply. "That's the beauty of it." She stared at me for a long moment, as if trying to recognize the man in front of her. Maybe she expected rage, heartbreak, something cinematic. But all she got was calm, cold, clean calm. "You don't get to do this," she whispered again. "I already did," I said. "You left for 6 days, Mara. I just used the time wisely." When she finally stood, I noticed the tears she'd been holding back. They were real, I think. Maybe not for me, but for herself. The realization that her perfect illusion had shattered. "You'll regret this," she said, voice cracking. I smiled one last time. "Maybe, but I'll regret it from a quiet house with working locks." As she walked out, suitcase trailing behind her, I felt no triumph, no vengeance, just peace. Real, earned peace. 6 days earlier, she'd left a husband behind. Now she was leaving a man who'd finally remembered his worth. And honestly, that was the best vacation I'd ever had. If revenge had a smell, it'd be a mix of fresh paper and nervous perfume. I spent that morning setting the scene like I was producing a Broadway play titled The Consequences of Being Stupid, starring Mara Jensen and Karma as herself. The house looked perfect, spotless floors, curtains drawn halfway, one chair at the center of the living room under a single warm light. The yellow envelope sat on the table like a trophy, quiet and deadly. I even poured a glass of water and placed it next to it for dramatic effect. Not for her, just props. Props make a story believable, and I was crafting my final act. When the door creaked open that evening, I swear I could hear her confidence before I saw her face. That woman walked in like she'd just closed $1 million deal in manipulation. Same perfume, same smug aura, same delusion. She scanned the room and gave me that little smirk, the one she used to flash whenever she thought she had the upper hand. "Are you really going to be dramatic?" she said, dropping her bag by the door like she still had squatter rights. I didn't flinch. "Me? Dramatic? You dated your boss, not a Broadway director." She rolled her eyes, like my humor was a nuisance interrupting her victim monologue. I gestured toward the table. "Go on, have a seat. Curtains up." She hesitated. "What's this?" "Your performance review," I said. She exhaled hard, annoyed, and sat down. The yellow envelope sat between us like a loaded gun. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then I slid it toward her with 2 fingers. "You should open it." "I'm not in the mood for games," she said. "Oh, this isn't a game," I replied. "Games are fun. This is closure with paperwork." The sound of paper tearing filled the room. Funny how something so simple could feel so final. She pulled out the documents and started skimming. At first, her expression didn't change. She was probably expecting a cliché apology letter or some emotional plea to work things out. Then she hit the first page with the legal header, and her face froze. I watched her eyes move, left to right, faster and faster, her breathing changing rhythm. I swear, it was like watching a Wi-Fi signal drop in real time. She flipped to the next page, screenshots, text logs, timestamps. The receipts. Her lips parted slightly. "What is this?" she whispered. "That," I said, leaning back, "is the consequence of thinking I don't notice things." Her hand trembled slightly as she kept reading. Hotel bookings under her name. Credit card statements showing dinners for 2. GPS data showing her business trips at the same hotel where her boss's company card pinged. And then, Derek's masterpiece, the divorce decree, already signed by me, notarized, and ready for filing. She got to the bottom of the packet and saw the clause she didn't understand, so she read it out loud. "Forfeiture of joint assets due to fraudulent concealment and adultery," she muttered. Then she looked up at me, eyes wide, voice trembling. "You can't do this." I smiled, slow and steady, like a man sipping a fine drink after a long day. "Oh, but I can. You see, you built your empire on lies. I just sent the eviction notice." She slammed the papers on the table. "You're insane." "Maybe," I said, "but I'm legally protected, and you're legally single, pending processing." The silence that followed could have won awards. You could almost hear her world cracking, piece by piece. The woman who once strutted through life like she had backup dancers was suddenly standing on a stage with no spotlight. She stood up abruptly, pacing. "You've been spying on me?" "No," I said. "I've been documenting you." "Big difference. One's illegal. The other's just organized." She clenched her fists. "You planned this." I laughed. "Mara, you vanished for 6 days. I had time to renovate my soul and reorganize my patience. Planning was the least I could do." She stopped pacing and turned to me, eyes glassy but still trying to look defiant. "You can't just throw away everything we built." I tilted my head. "You threw it first. I just swept the floor." For a moment, she didn't speak. Her shoulders dropped, and her voice softened. "I made a mistake, okay? I was confused." I raised a brow. "You were confused for 6 months and 43 text messages? Must have been some fog." She winced. "It didn't mean anything." I couldn't help but laugh. "Oh, good. Because neither does your access to the joint checking account anymore." Her eyes darted toward the hallway like she was trying to see what else I'd taken from her. "My clothes. Packed and stored," I said. "My jewelry. Sold. Well, pawned temporarily. You'd be surprised what a bracelet can fetch." Her jaw dropped. "You're joking. Do I look like I'm in a joking mood?" I asked. "Actually, don't answer that. I'm having the time of my life." She slumped back into the chair, staring down at the papers as if they might start apologizing on my behalf. Then, almost in a whisper, she said, "You really hate me, don't you?" I shook my head. "No, Mara. I don't hate you. Hate would mean you still matter. You're just a cautionary tale now." There it was, the first tear. She tried to hide it, wiping her cheek quickly, pretending it was dust. "You're being cruel," she said. "Cruel?" I repeated, pretending to think. "Nah. Cruel would have been telling your mom the truth about your work promotion. I just handled this privately. I'm classy like that." She glared at me, her pride trying to resurface, but the documents kept reminding her that pride didn't pay the mortgage anymore. "I can fight this," she said suddenly, her voice rising. "I can hire a lawyer." I grinned. "Oh, you absolutely can. But I wouldn't recommend using the same credit card you used for hotel reservations. It's frozen." She blinked. "You froze my cards?" "You froze your marriage," I replied. I just returned the favor. She looked like she wanted to throw something, but the only thing within reach was the water glass. She grabbed it, stared at it for a second, then set it down with a shaking hand. "You planned every part of this," she said quietly. "You waited for me to walk into a trap." "No," I said. "You built the trap." I just turned on the light. There was a long silence after that, the kind that fills every corner of a house until it hums. I could tell she was thinking, calculating, trying to find a loophole, but Derek doesn't leave loopholes. He fills them with cement and signatures. Finally, she whispered, "So that's it." I nodded. "That's it. The show's over. Curtain down. No encore." She didn't move for a while. Just sat there, eyes fixed on the envelope, probably wishing she could unsee it. Then she stood slowly, wiped her face, and straightened her jacket. "You'll regret this," she said again, like repetition could make it true. I smiled. "Maybe, but I'll do it from a better place. One without lies, or your perfume." As she walked toward the door, she stopped by the hallway mirror and stared at herself. I watched her reflection, a woman realizing she was no longer the main character in someone else's story. She looked back at me one last time. "I never thought you'd be capable of this." "That's the problem," I said. "You never thought I was capable of anything that didn't involve forgiving you." Then she left. No door slammed this time, just a quiet click that sounded like punctuation. I sat there for a long time, listening to the silence, the good kind, the earned kind. The chair she'd sat in still carried her perfume, but even that felt weaker now, like it knew it wasn't welcome anymore. I picked up the glass of water, untouched, symbolic, and poured it down the sink. Performance concluded, I muttered to myself. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Derek, it's done?" he asked. "Oh yeah," I said, smiling. She read every word, even the fine print. He laughed. "How'd she take it?" "Like someone allergic to accountability." "Good," he said. "Paperwork doesn't lie." After we hung up, I sat back down, staring at the now empty table. The envelope was gone, but the peace stayed. I realized that night that revenge doesn't have to be loud to be satisfying. Sometimes it's just neat handwriting on official paper. I didn't destroy her life. I just handed it back to her minus the illusions. As I turned off the lights, the room felt different. Lighter, cleaner, like the house itself had been holding its breath this whole time. And for the first time in years, I slept like a man who didn't owe anyone an explanation. You'd think after delivering the paperwork equivalent of a thunderstorm, the house would go quiet, stay still, move on. But no, Mara didn't leave quietly. The queen of chaos doesn't retire. She goes down swinging, mascara first. After she walked out that night, I honestly thought she'd vanish for good. Maybe go cry into her boss's shoulder or write an overly dramatic Facebook post about growth. Instead, she did what all self-centered people do when they lose power. She came back for an encore. I woke up the next morning to 3 missed calls, 2 texts, and 1 long voice note that sounded like a TED Talk on regret. The first line, "Logan, I think we both overreacted." "We both?" I laughed so hard I scared the toaster. Nothing like being lumped into a "we" right after getting cheated on. Her second message said, "You can't just erase me." Oh, but I could, and I had receipts. Literally. The only thing left to erase was her contact name, which I changed from Mara Red Heart to Do Not Resuscitate. That day, I went to work like nothing happened. I didn't tell my coworkers. You can't just walk into the office and say, "Hey, my wife confessed to adultery and lost all our joint assets. How was your weekend?" I sat at my desk, typed reports, and smiled every time my phone buzzed. There's something addictive about watching someone who used to control your emotions start losing control of theirs. It's poetic, like watching a magician accidentally reveal the trick. Around lunch, Derek called. She's trying to contact me, he said, barely hiding his amusement. She's claiming she was manipulated into signing. Oh, really? I said, stirring my coffee. Was she also manipulated into 6 days of hotel bookings and bad decisions? Derek laughed. Don't worry, the clause holds. Her name's not on anything anymore. She can file a complaint if she wants, but she'll need a lawyer, and those cost money, something she doesn't have access to. I swear, hearing that was better than therapy. By day 2, Mara escalated. She showed up at the house. Well, tried to. I was working on my laptop when I heard furious knocking like the police had discovered a stash of hidden morals. I peeked through the peephole and saw her standing there, sunglasses on, voice raised, pretending the neighbors weren't definitely recording. Logan, open the door, she shouted. We need to talk. We? There was that word again, like a mosquito that refused to die. I cracked the door just enough to make her think I was open to negotiation. Oh, you're back, I said, smiling. Did the vacation end early, or did the hotel finally check your moral credit score? She pushed at the door. You can't keep my things. Actually, I can, I said, holding up my phone. You left voluntarily, remember? The lease is in my name now. Derek made sure of it. Her jaw dropped. You're unbelievable. Thank you, I said. Took years of practice. Then came the waterworks. Actual tears. She dropped the sunglasses, voice trembling, looking every bit the Oscar nominee for Best Performance by a Guilty Spouse. Logan, I made a mistake. I thought I wanted something different, but it was just, she paused, probably searching for a word that made her sound like less of a cliché, confusion. 6 days of confusion? I said, that's not confusion. That's a miniseries. She sighed. Can't we just start over? I raised an eyebrow. Start over? With what? You sold the sequel rights when you left with your lover. I'm fresh out of reboots. She wiped her face, trying to regroup. You're really going to throw away 5 years? I leaned against the doorframe, calm as a monk who's seen the light. I didn't throw it away, Mara. You donated it to your boss's ego. She glared. I didn't love him. It wasn't about that. Oh, I know, I said. It was about you. It's always been about you. The truth hit her like a slap she didn't see coming. She looked smaller then, like the weight of her choices finally caught up. You're cruel, she whispered. Cruel? I said, pretending to think. Nah, I'm just cured. When she realized she wasn't getting back inside, she did what any desperate narcissist would, switch tactics. If you think you can just move on without me, you're wrong, she said. You'll regret this. You keep saying that, I replied. Is that your new mantra? She scoffed, turned on her heel, and stormed off. The sound of her heels on the pavement was oddly satisfying. The neighbors peeked through curtains like it was primetime TV. I shut the door, smiled, and said to myself, season finale, baby. But the show wasn't over. Not yet. The next day, I got a text from her mom, Patricia, the original drama coach. Logan, I heard what happened, she wrote. You need to be the bigger person. I almost dropped my phone laughing. Be the bigger person? I'd been carrying that entire marriage like a gym membership nobody uses. Hi, Patricia, I replied. I was the bigger person. That's how she had room to cheat. No response. Guess she didn't like my punchline. Meanwhile, I started noticing the ripple effect. Her little affair had detonated more than just our relationship. It was taking down her social life, too. Her boss, the guy she'd risked everything for, got outed after his wife found out through, guess who? Derek's investigator. Turns out, I wasn't the only one getting paperwork ready. The fallout was spectacular. The company launched an internal review. HR meetings exploded, and suddenly Mara wasn't the golden girl anymore. I didn't lift a finger. Karma handled the workload. The group chat she used to brag about? Ghost town. The friends who once envied her exciting life? Now whispering. You can't post hashtag couple goals from unemployment. I heard through Riley that she'd been crashing at a friend's apartment, couch surfing her way through what I like to call post-affair purgatory. He said, man, she's trying to spin it like you blindsided her. I laughed. Blindsided her? I literally left her an envelope with instructions. Yeah, he said, chuckling. She's telling people you went cold. No, I corrected. I went factual. That weekend, she texted again. Can we meet? Just to talk. I stared at the message for a full minute, sipping whiskey like a man contemplating whether to reopen a crime scene. Then I typed back, sure. Bring a pen. You forgot to sign the last page. She didn't reply. Victory tasted like oak barrel and freedom. But the real satisfaction came the following Monday. Derek called again, voice practically grinning. Update. Her attorney tried to contest the asset clause. It didn't go well. Why not? I asked, though I already knew. Because her attorney pointed out that she signed everything voluntarily, and we have footage of her acknowledging it. I blinked. Footage. Ring cam, Derek said. You can actually hear her say, "You can't do this," right before you said, "I already did." It's perfect. I leaned back in my chair, laughing until I nearly spilled my drink. So, what you're telling me is, I accidentally filmed her downfall in HD? Exactly, Derek said. I'm framing that clip. And that's when it hit me. This wasn't just the end of a marriage. It was the unraveling of her empire. Mara had built her identity around control, around appearances. Without me, she wasn't the put-together wife in the perfect house anymore. She was just a woman with bad choices and worse timing. The funny thing? I didn't even feel vengeful anymore. Just free. Like watching a storm you survive from the safety of your porch. The kind of peace that doesn't need applause. I started reclaiming the house that week. Repainted the walls, threw out the furniture she picked, replaced her designer chaos with thrift store calm. Every nail I hammered felt like therapy. I even replaced our framed wedding photo with a picture of a beach sunset. Symbolic? Sure. Petty? Absolutely. Healing? You bet. I'd come home after work, sit on the couch with a beer, and laugh at how quiet the place was. Peace has a sound, you know. It's like air conditioning after a long argument. Still, part of me couldn't help checking her socials now and then. Morbid curiosity. She'd gone from posting selfies and motivational quotes to vague captions about growth and new beginnings. Classic cheater rebrand. One post read, "Sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself." I commented from a burner account. Try the lost and found at Hotel Paradise. She blocked me within an hour. Totally worth it. Weeks went by, and the silence became my new favorite soundtrack. No calls, no texts, no guilt trips. Just me, my playlists, and the faint memory of a woman who thought she'd never fall. Then one afternoon, Derek sent me an email titled "Case Closed." I opened it to find the finalized divorce decree, stamped and official. I stared at that document for a while, not as a symbol of victory, but of closure. The empire had fallen, and all I had to do was stand still. Later that night, Riley came over with beer and pizza to celebrate. "To new beginnings," he said, raising his bottle. "To endings that feel better," I corrected. We laughed, clinked bottles, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was faking happiness. I looked around the room, the walls lighter, the air clearer, and thought, damn, this place finally feels like mine. Before bed, I got one last text from an unknown number. "I hope you're happy." I typed back, "I am." Then I turned off my phone, set it face down, and smiled at the silence. Watching Mara's empire collapse hadn't been about revenge. It was about finally watching myself stand back up. And honestly, it was one hell of a view. There's an art to ending things. Some people slam doors. Some people cry on the front porch for dramatic effect. Mara, on the other hand, tried to leave like a movie star who just got fired mid-scene. Dignity in her walk, chaos in her suitcase. The morning after her empire collapsed, she showed up again, softer this time. She wasn't wearing her war paint. No lipstick, no perfect hair, just sweatpants and shame. I almost didn't recognize her without the attitude. Almost. She stood there holding a duffel bag, eyes red, voice trembling like she'd just been rehearsing apologies in her car mirror. "Logan, can we talk?" she asked. I sighed. "Mara, you're running out of synonyms for talk." She stepped closer. "Please, just 5 minutes." I opened the door halfway, not out of mercy, but curiosity. I wanted to see what version of Mara I was getting today. The manipulator, the victim, or the actress with no script. She looked around the house like it was a museum of bad memories. The photos were gone. The fancy throw pillows she loved replaced with cheap ones that didn't remind me of lies. "You changed everything," she said quietly. "Yeah," I said. "Turns out betrayal doesn't match the old color scheme." She flinched, but sat down anyway, gripping her bag like it might save her. "I've been thinking," she started. "Always dangerous," I muttered. She ignored that. "I don't expect forgiveness, but maybe we can start fresh, as friends." I actually laughed. "Friends? Mara, I don't even friend people who spoil movies. and you spoiled my marriage. She winced, eyes dropping to the floor. I know. I messed up. I thought I wanted freedom, but I just wanted something to feel different. You were always so calm, so predictable. I nodded slowly. Yeah, I made the mistake of being reliable. My bad. She reached across the table, fingers brushing mine like muscle memory. I didn't move. You don't even miss me? She asked softly. There it was, the guilt bait. Classic. Mara, I said. You disappeared for 6 days and came back smelling like a hotel lobby. Missing you would be a mental illness. She pulled her hand back, tears welling up again. He wasn't what I thought, she whispered. He used me. I leaned back, arms crossed. Oh, so you're the victim now? You joined the scam and got scammed? That's karma's buy one get one deal. She covered her face, shoulders shaking, and for a second, just a second, I felt something like pity. But then I remembered that text. He still doesn't know winking face. And pity evaporated faster than trust. You don't get to cry here, I said quietly. Not in the house you lied in. Not on the floor where I stood defending you to everyone. She froze, hand half raised to wipe her face. I just want closure. I smiled. You had closure. It came in an envelope. That earned me a glare sharp enough to cut glass. You're cruel. You keep saying that, I replied. But I think what you mean is unbothered. She stood suddenly, pacing. You think this makes you the hero? No, I said. Heroes save people. I just stopped saving you. She stopped pacing, staring at me like I'd spoken another language. You loved me once. I did, I said. And then you made love look stupid. There was silence then, the kind that makes you aware of every heartbeat, every breath. She sat back down slowly, wiping her face with the sleeve of her sweatshirt. Where am I supposed to go? She asked finally. Anywhere that isn't here, I said. You built your escape plan. Use it. I don't have money, she whispered. You had 6 days of funding, I replied. What happened? Bad investment. She gave me that look again, half fury, half desperation. You can't even help me a little? I did help, I said. I helped you see who you are. She stood again, walked toward the doorway, then paused, eyes scanning the walls like she was looking for her old life. You really changed the locks? She asked, voice barely above a whisper. Twice, I said. I like symmetry. Her lips trembled, but she nodded. You'll regret this, she said. Everyone keeps promising me that, I replied. Still waiting. She grabbed her bag and headed for the door. The sound of her zipper snagging filled the silence, tiny but satisfying. When she reached the threshold, she hesitated. Goodbye, Logan. Goodbye, Mara, I said. Exit, stage left. She frowned, confused, then walked out. The door clicked shut behind her, and just like that, it was over. No fireworks, no screaming, just peace sliding back into the room like it had been waiting for permission. I leaned against the wall, exhaling so deeply it felt like I was letting go of 5 years in one breath. The air smelled different now, like wood polish and freedom. I turned on some music, something old and soulful, the kind you play when the storm's finally passed. Then I sat on the couch and laughed, not out of joy, but disbelief. She'd actually tried to start fresh. With me. The audacity could have powered a small city. That night, I got a text from her sister, Ivy. I heard what happened. She's staying with me for now. Maybe you should talk before it gets uglier. I replied, it's already a Picasso. No need to add strokes. Ivy didn't text back. Family loyalty, I guess. But at least Mara had a couch. I figured that was poetic justice. A woman who once judged people for renting, now living off borrowed furniture. The next morning, I took a long drive. No destination, just asphalt therapy. Windows down, wind in my face, radio blasting. The farther I got from that house, the lighter I felt. At one point, I stopped at a diner off the highway, ordered pancakes, and realized I was smiling for real. Not the forced, I'm fine smile, but the genuine kind that comes from remembering you survived. The waitress, an older lady with kind eyes, asked, You celebrating something? I said, Yeah, the end of something. She laughed. Endings are just badly advertised beginnings. Wise woman. She brought me extra syrup. By noon, I'd made up my mind. I wasn't just going to move on, I was going to upgrade. I called a realtor, listed the house. The agent asked, Reason for selling? I said, Emotional renovation. She didn't get it, but she didn't need to. By evening, I'd already had 2 showings. Turns out people love a house with fresh energy. If only they knew how I cleaned it. A week later, Mara tried one last time. She called from an unknown number. Classic move. I picked up just to hear how far she'd fallen. Logan, she said softly, I heard you're selling the house. News travels fast, I said. Yeah, I'm done living in a crime scene. We could. She started, then stopped. Never mind. Good instinct, I said. There was a pause. Then she whispered, I really did love you, you know. I sighed. Then you should have told your actions. She didn't reply, just hung up. That was the last time I heard her voice. When the house finally sold, I stood in the empty living room one last time. The walls echoed differently now. No shouting, no tension, just silence and sunlight. I looked around, half expecting some flashback montage to play in my head, but nothing came. Just relief. I whispered, goodbye, Queen of Chaos, locked the door behind me, and walked away. Moving into my new apartment felt like rebooting life. Smaller space, bigger peace. No shared closet arguments, no perfumed lies. I even bought new furniture. Cheap, simple mine. The first night, I made dinner for one, opened a beer, and toasted to freedom. To starting over, I said to no one. The fridge hummed in agreement. Riley dropped by later with his usual blunt wisdom. Man, he said, looking around the apartment. You look lighter. I deleted 140 pounds of drama, I said. You mean Mara? I mean everything attached to her. He laughed. So what now? I shrugged. Maybe travel. Maybe sleep. Maybe exist without apologizing. That's deep, he said, grabbing a beer. You gonna write a book about it? Already did, I said, holding up my yellow envelope. Bestseller in the closure section. As the night wore on, I realized something that hadn't hit me before. Revenge wasn't the victory. Peace was. Watching her walk out wasn't the triumph. It was me not chasing after her that sealed it. I'd spent years reacting to Mara, her moods, her silence, her chaos. But now, for the first time, I was still. Still, but not stuck. Calm, but not numb. Just done. I went to bed that night with the window open, the city humming outside. Somewhere out there, Mara was probably spinning her own version of events, trying to paint herself as the misunderstood heroine. But that was fine. Let her write her story. Mine had already found its ending, and I didn't need her in the sequel. Ghosting gets a bad rap until you're the one doing it for your own peace of mind. Let me tell you, there's a certain kind of quiet power in not responding. After years of explaining, apologizing, and justifying myself to a woman who thought accountability was a myth, silence felt like a luxury item. I didn't plan to ghost Mara at first. It just happened naturally, like my soul blocked her number before my brain did. The first few days after her grand exit, my phone lit up like a slot machine. Texts, calls, voicemails that ranged from tearful to furious to manipulative motivational speaker. Logan, we need closure. You can't just erase someone. I deserve to be heard. My favorite was, I made mistakes, but don't you miss me? Miss her? I missed common sense. I missed not double-checking credit card statements. I missed sleeping next to someone who wasn't rehearsing betrayal in her head. But her? No, not even a little. By day 4, the messages got longer, voice notes turning into essays with musical background noise like she thought I'd respond better with ambience. One night, she said, I hope you're happy. You seem like you're thriving while I'm falling apart. I listened to that one twice, not out of sympathy, but because it felt like the first honest thing she'd said in years. I was thriving, and she was falling apart. Finally, balance. I didn't delete the messages. I archived them, not as mementos, but as reminders of how peace sounds compared to chaos. Every time I wanted to respond with some clever comeback, I'd remind myself, I don't owe her closure. I gave her paperwork, and that's as close to closure as you get in this economy. Riley noticed the change in me first. He dropped by one Saturday with tacos and the kind of grin people wear when they're about to say something they think is profound. You look different, he said. Peaceful. It's creepy. Thanks, I said. I call it self-respect with a side of block button. He laughed. So, you're really not talking to her at all? Nope. I'm ghosting her harder than a bad Tinder date. You think that's healthy? I think it's overdue. Riley shrugged. Man, I admire your commitment. Most guys would have caved by now. Most guys haven't been cheated on with a man who says synergy unironically. Touché. Around that same time, Derek texted me an update. The divorce was officially finalized. The house sold, the assets split according to the clause, Meaning, of course, 100% mine. You're legally free, he wrote. I stared at those words for a while. Legally free. There should have been confetti. Instead, I just smiled, leaned back, and let that sentence sink into my bones. Legally free meant she couldn't drag me into her drama anymore. She couldn't guilt me, couldn't manipulate me, couldn't even use my name to open a store credit account. I was a man without strings for the first time in years. Mara didn't take the silence well. After a week of ghosting, she tried to up the emotional ante. If you don't respond, I'll come over. I didn't reply. I mean it, Logan. You can't just ignore me forever. Watch me. The next day, she sent an old photo of us on our anniversary, smiling, pretending. The caption, "We were good once." I stared at it for a full minute, then hit delete. Not block, delete. Blocking means you care enough to set boundaries. Deleting means you stopped caring altogether. The more I ignored her, the more I started rediscovering myself. It's wild how much energy you get back when you're not emotionally funding someone else's chaos. I picked up old hobbies. Started running again. Cooked real meals instead of surviving on instant noodles and resentment. My coworkers noticed too. "You've been smiling a lot lately," my assistant, Jenna, said one morning. "New woman." "No," I replied. "No woman." She laughed. "That'll do it." She wasn't wrong. But of course, Mara didn't quit. Week 2, she sent a handwritten letter. Who even does that in 2025? It arrived in a pink envelope, smelled like regret and expensive perfume. The handwriting was neat, like she wanted to prove she could still control the narrative. It read, "I know I hurt you. I know I was selfish. I can't sleep. I keep seeing your face when I close my eyes. Please talk to me. I don't care if you yell. I just want to hear your voice." I folded it neatly, walked to my trash can, and tossed it without breaking stride. No dramatics, just precision. The trash lid shut like a period at the end of a very long, stupid sentence. By week 3, I started hearing rumors. Ivy texted, saying she's been going through it. Lost her job, lost friends. She's not herself. I stared at the message, then replied, "She should try being someone else." Ivy sent back a single wow. I didn't bother clarifying. There was nothing to clarify. Actions have consequences. Hers just arrived on time. Still, I wasn't cruel about it. I didn't post anything online, didn't badmouth her to mutual friends. I didn't need to. Her downfall was self-published. One afternoon, while reorganizing my apartment, I found the old wedding album. It had survived the purge somehow, tucked in a box labeled miscellaneous. I flipped through it out of morbid curiosity. There we were, all smiles, hands clasped, the preacher in mid-blessing. It looked like a movie still from a romance that didn't deserve a sequel. I closed the book gently, then tossed it into the donation pile. Let someone else look at those smiles and imagine they were real. Around that time, Riley convinced me to go out again. "You can't just sit at home forever," he said. "Let's hit a bar, see some people." I agreed reluctantly, mostly because I'd run out of snacks. We ended up at a small rooftop place downtown, string lights, mellow music, the kind of atmosphere designed for healing. I wasn't looking for anything, definitely not love, but it felt good to laugh again, to talk without scanning for lies. I met a woman named Leah. She had this calm energy, the opposite of Mara's hurricane. We talked about travel, books, life. She didn't overshare, didn't oversmile, just listened. At one point, she said, "You seem like someone who's been through something heavy but learned to carry it lightly." I grinned. Let's just say I dropped the luggage. She laughed. Real laugh. Simple. Honest. It wasn't romantic, but it reminded me what normal felt like. The next morning, I woke up to another voicemail from Mara. "I saw your picture. You look happy. I'm glad, really. I just hope you remember me." I didn't listen to the rest. There was nothing left to hear. That's the thing about ghosting. It's not about punishment. It's about peace. You don't ignore them to make them chase you. You ignore them because you finally understand they're not worth your words anymore. One night, weeks later, I was sitting on my balcony with a drink, watching the city lights, when it hit me. I hadn't thought about Mara all day. Not once. Not her lies. Not her perfume. Not her betrayal. Nothing. The ghost of her presence had finally left the room. That's when I realized I hadn't just ghosted her. I'd ghosted the version of me who tolerated her. The man who stayed quiet to keep peace, who accepted half love as enough. He was gone too, and in his place was someone better. Someone healed. The following week, Derek called one last time. "I got something for you," he said. "Your final case copy. Everything's closed." He sent me a PDF with the stamped decree, official seals, signatures, the full legal exorcism. I printed it, slid it into a yellow folder, and tucked it into my drawer next to my passport. Freedom Documents, I labeled it. And every time I opened that drawer afterward, I smiled. By the end of that month, Mara had stopped reaching out. No more calls, no letters, no desperate texts. I'd like to think she finally understood. Or maybe she just ran out of energy. Either way, I didn't celebrate her silence. I just appreciated it. It meant the chapter was really, truly over. The house was sold. The story ended. The ghost laid to rest. Sometimes I catch myself wondering if she ever realized how much easier life gets when you stop trying to control it. Probably not. Some people never learn that lesson. But me? I learned that silence isn't empty. It's full of answers. Every unanswered text, every unreturned call, every ignored voicemail, it all spoke louder than any argument ever could. It said, "I'm done." It said, "You don't get access anymore." It said, "Peace isn't shared, it's earned." Now, whenever someone asks me about her, I just shrug and say, she was a lesson. Expensive, but thorough. And then I change the subject, because she's not worth the airtime. The only ghost left in my life now is the one I buried quietly, her memory. And trust me, I'm not haunted. I'm free. You know you've healed when revenge starts tasting like peace instead of whiskey. The house was gone, the divorce was final, and my phone had officially retired from drama duty. I was sitting in my new apartment one quiet Sunday morning, sunlight bleeding through the blinds, coffee in hand, watching dust float in the air like freedom confetti. The world outside hummed, but inside, silence. The good kind, the kind that doesn't demand answers. It had been months since Mara's last attempt at contact, and I hadn't thought about her in any real way except when someone accidentally said the word vacation, and I had a small PTSD flashback involving sunscreen and betrayal. Other than that, life was normal, which felt almost illegal after years of emotional turbulence. The yellow envelope, the same one that started the chain reaction, sat in my desk drawer. I hadn't opened it since that night, but I liked knowing it was there, my personal holy grail of closure. I kept a few copies too, neatly filed, because sometimes freedom needs documentation. That morning, I found myself staring at that drawer, not out of nostalgia, but curiosity. The same curiosity that makes you Google your ex just to confirm they still exist, preferably in lower resolution. I pulled it open and there it was, creased edges, faint coffee stain, still smelling faintly like printer ink and poetic justice. I took it out, sat down at the table, and just looked at it. The last time this envelope had been in someone else's hands, it detonated my marriage. Now it just looked ordinary. Isn't that wild? Something that once symbolized chaos now just looked like paper. I slid the documents out, flipping through them like an old photo album, screenshots, receipts, clauses, Derek's sarcastic margin notes. I smiled at one line where he'd written, Clause 7, Fraud and Adultery. Logan wins everything. Sorry, Mara. The man deserved an award. As I sat there rereading the evidence that used to make my blood boil, something shifted. I didn't feel anger anymore. I didn't even feel pity. I just felt gratitude. Because without all of this, I'd still be trapped in that polite misery we called marriage. People talk about love setting you free, but sometimes it's the envelope that does it. That yellow folder had done what years of therapy couldn't. It cut the cord cleanly. I ran my hand over the paper, then laughed out loud because, let's be honest, who the hell holds emotional ceremonies for legal documents? Apparently me. I poured another cup of coffee, toasted the air, and said, to the best breakup gift ever. The phone buzzed, dragging me out of my sentimental spiral. Unknown number. I considered ignoring it, but curiosity's a nosy roommate. I answered. Logan Pierce, I said, sounding way more formal than a man in pajamas should. Logan. The voice on the other end was female, hesitant. For half a second, my stomach dropped. I knew that voice. Mara, I said flatly. You're still alive. Miracles happen. She sighed. I'm not calling to fight. Good, I said. You're unarmed. There was silence. Then she said, I just wanted to say thank you. I blinked. That's a new one. For what? The paperwork. For letting me fall, she said softly. It took losing everything to realize what I'd done. I leaned back, suspicious but intrigued. Mara, if this is another act, you're under-rehearsed. It's not, she said. I'm getting help. Therapy. I'm different now. Good, I said. Self-improvement looks good on people who used to destroy others. She didn't rise to the bait, which honestly threw me off. I just wanted you to know, she continued, that I see now how much I hurt you. I used to think silence was punishment. Now I get it, it's peace. I froze. For a moment, her words hit something I didn't know was still bruised. Well, I said after a pause, glad you caught up. I don't expect you to forgive me, she said, voice trembling. I just needed to say it. And then she hung up. No tears, no theatrics, no manipulation. Just click. I sat there staring at my phone, half expecting it to burst into flames. Instead, all I felt was calm. Not relief. Not triumph. Just calm. Like hearing a chapter close in real time. I deleted the number without hesitation. Not out of anger. Out of completion. I stood up, walked to the balcony, and let the morning wind hit my face. The city buzzed below, alive and oblivious. And for the first time since everything went down, I realized I didn't hate her anymore. I didn't love her either. She was just someone I used to know. A closed tab in the browser of my life. That night, I met Riley at our usual bar. A small dive with sticky floors and decent wings. He took one look at me and said, "You look weirdly peaceful. Did you get laid or get therapy?" "Neither," I said. Mara called. He almost choked on his drink. "You answered?" "Yeah." "Why? You trying to audition for dumb decisions too?" She said thank you. I said. He blinked. Like, sarcastically? "No. Legit thank you." Riley laughed so hard the bartender stared. "Man, that's not closure, that's a plot twist." "Tell me about it," I said. But it didn't mess me up. I didn't feel anything. He raised his glass. "Then it's official. You're free." He wasn't wrong. The next few weeks were a blur of normalcy. Work, gym, Netflix, actual sleep. I started saying yes to things again. Weekend trips, new restaurants, people who didn't ask for emotional babysitting. I even ran into Leah again, the woman from the rooftop bar. We grabbed coffee, talked for hours. She was calm, grounded, funny in a way that didn't feel performative. I didn't know if it was romantic, and honestly, I didn't care. It just felt human. And that was enough. One Sunday evening, I was cleaning out my drawers when I came across a small stack of unopened mail. Bills, ads, and one letter addressed to Mr. and Mrs. Logan Pierce. I laughed. "Mrs. Who?" I opened it. Turns out it was from the mortgage company, confirming the final transfer of ownership to my name only. At the bottom, it read, "All joint liability dissolved." I stared at those words, then at the envelope in my desk, and I swear something poetic hit me right in the chest. That yellow envelope didn't just end a marriage. It rewrote the definition of freedom for me. It wasn't vengeance. It wasn't bitterness. It was balance restored. I grabbed a pen, wrote on the back of it in big block letters, "The envelope that set me free." Then I slipped it back into the drawer, not as a reminder of pain, but of power. Every scar needs a souvenir, and this one was mine. Over time, people started noticing the difference. My coworkers said I seemed lighter. My mom stopped giving me those pity glances over Sunday dinner. Even my boss, who normally only complimented spreadsheets, said, "You're performing at your best lately. Whatever changed, keep it up." I smiled and said, "Divorce. Highly underrated." Months later, I took a solo trip upstate. A small cabin near a lake. Nothing fancy, just quiet. I brought a journal, my phone on airplane mode, and a bottle of bourbon because healing should always come with good company. One night, sitting by the fire, I took out my notebook and started writing. Not about Mara, not even about revenge. About peace. About learning that you can't fix people who profit from your patience. About realizing silence doesn't mean weakness, it's self-defense. I wrote until my hand cramped, then closed the book and stared into the flames. Somewhere out there, Mara was probably doing whatever people do when they finally realize they're not the hero. And that was fine. Her story didn't belong in my ending. The next morning, I woke up early and watched the sunrise over the lake. The air was cold, sharp, honest. I thought about the man I'd been when all this started, desperate, hopeful, angry. And then I thought about the man sitting there now, content, grounded, free. I whispered to the water, "You made it, man." Because sometimes you have to say it out loud to believe it. When I got home, I placed the yellow envelope on my shelf, no longer hidden away in a drawer, but displayed like a trophy, not of revenge, but of recovery. Friends who visited would sometimes point at it and ask, "What's that?" I'd grin and say, "A reminder that paperwork can save your soul." They'd laugh, but I meant it. Every time I saw that envelope, it reminded me how far I'd come, from the man who tolerated lies to the man who chose silence over drama, calm over chaos. One night, I hosted a small get-together at my place. Riley, Leah, and a few friends from work. Music playing, food everywhere, laughter bouncing off the walls. At one point, Leah wandered over to the shelf, picked up the yellow envelope, and said, "This looks important." I smiled. "It is. That's the one thing in this apartment worth more than everything else combined." "What's inside?" she asked. "Freedom," I said simply. She laughed, not fully getting it, but that was fine. The story wasn't for everyone. It was for me. Later that night, after everyone left, I stood by the window with a glass of bourbon, staring at the city lights. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was surviving. I was living. And maybe that's the real twist. Not the betrayal, not the revenge, but the quiet realization that peace doesn't need to announce itself. It just walks in, sits down, and makes itself at home. I finished my drink, turned off the lights, and looked at the envelope one last time before bed. It wasn't just paper anymore. It was proof. Proof that endings can be beautiful if you write them yourself. Proof that sometimes closure doesn't come from apologies or explanations, but from finally deciding the story's over. I smiled, whispered, "Thank you for everything you ruined," and went to sleep under the kind of silence that only belongs to the truly free.